All righty, the Finance Committee meeting is called to order on July 20th at 10:32 a.m. I have in attendance my colleagues Alderwoman O'Neill and Alderwoman Finlayson. At this time, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And at this time, could I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 6, 2022?
Motion to approve meeting minutes, July 6th, 2022.
I'll second that. I'm looking at are these the minutes from 7/6/22 or 6?
Oh,
Did I say
6/22?
6? Did I say 6?
7.
I'm reading the agenda. It says 7/6/22. Okay. I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All righty, so we have some supplementary appropriations to review, and the first one up, literally the first one in 2023, SA 1-23, Office of OEM. Could we have representatives of OEM come up to the table and introduce themselves? Do we move for discussion or wait for that?
For an essay, you can
Just talk
have
about
him explain it and then we'll vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so we have in front of us the supplementary appropriation and then an outline of how you're managing the opioid funds. I suspect this is good news.
This is good news.
Yes, it is.
This is very good news. I'm Kevin Simmons. I'm the Director of the Office of Emergency Management. I'm here with Mary Kate Severowski, Senior Planner in the Office of Emergency Management. And this is great news. When we last talked, I was here to talk about $70,000 for our programs, our 4 programs for substance use disorder. And that $70,000, along with some funding from the health department, would meet our $100,000 that we need to run these programs. And when I last talked to you, I said that we would always keep trying for other funding sources, and we were successful. We were successful to the tune of about $189,060, and that was from the Opioid Operational Command Center, which is a state entity. So this is the first time we had this grant. This is our first time award from them, and that will certainly enhance our programs. It's, like I said, it's about $100,000 for a nice, solid program. Anything extra would make it very, very robust. So with your approval and the approval of the full council, we can start spending this funding on August the 1st. So the next question would be, how is this funding broke down? And I know you're going to ask that question. So if you would turn to page 2. So the programs are the Naptown Anti-Dope Movement, Your Life Matters with the Fire Department, APD SUD with the Police Department, and OD Free Annapolis. So again, the award is $189,060, and this is how it's broken down. So go back to the mayor's office in the Naptown Anti-Dope. They will be awarded out of this funding $54,084.05. What is that going to go to? It's going to go to, they have a salary position, $4,500 for supplies, benefits for the salary position of $2,884.05, and contract services for $9,000. And that would be the breakdown for Naptown Anti-Dope. So let's talk about Your Life Matters from the fire department. Now, with this particular program, they don't have any additional staff. They use firefighters on overtime. They do a great job with that. So overtime budget for that program would be $37,230, along with $4,500 for benefits. And their supply account would be $7,189 for a total of $48,919 for that program alone. The police department program, APD, SUD, overtime, they use police officers in an overtime situation, that would be $15,000 with benefits of $11,169. They have a contract services person, and this person is really neat because when you get an overdose within about 36 or so hours, we try to actually go out and make contact with that person, whether in person or by phone, to see what type of resources and see if we can coach them to treatment. And we've been very, very aggressive with that. So that person is paid under contract services. They have a supply account of $3,000, which brings them to a total of $41,169 for that program. And then it's OD Free Annapolis. We have, that's an OEM, we have $3,137.93 for supplies. We also have the training account of $11,750. So we train folks from all of the programs. We pay for the training for that. So we have that account. And then we have contract services, about $30,000, and that pays for 3 staff people, which are an assistant project coordinator who manages our website, provides basic reports, analysis, and research. And then we have 2 substance use disorder field liaisons. And what they do is they provide harm reduction resources to known overdose hotspots. And they provide Narcan and fentanyl test strip training. And they provide reports and documentation. So we know where the funding is going. This was a competitive grant, so I want to say how many submittals did they have? About 100, maybe? They had 100 or so submittals across the state. We were very fortunate. They looked at our programs. They seen the results that we've been having over the last year or so, and they saw that this was worth investing from the state, and we're happy with that. So I hope you look favorably at these programs and push them more into the council for full approval. Answer any questions.
Just the first question is, we listened to you during the budget, review and hearings, and we were concerned about whether or not you were going to get this or not, if you remember. So we did ask for $70,000, which is currently in the budget. So how will that now be allocated? Or do we just, I guess that's a question for Jody.
Okay, so when this substantial grant award came out, we were told that we would no longer need the 70,000 contribution from the general fund for the program to operate. So I mean, I don't know if there's been a change in that, but that was the original comment.
So one of the things that I made clear when I came before the finance committee is that, we never really accepted the funding. The funding was there, but it really wasn't applied to these programs, which made the grant allowable, because had the 70,000 been applied to the programs, it would have been supplanting, and we may not get that grant. So that $70,000 was there lingering. However, we went for the grant, we got the grant, so.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that's treated in the budget,
So it will be, right now it's unspent money in the general fund, and it will stay there until it gets allocated for something else.
And my second and last question is, that letterhead, the state, where the money is coming from, Now, will that be this opioid operational command center? Is that where the money for opioids is? The state has a big budget for opioid, and is that where that is held? Is that the source of opioid funding from the state, which I guess comes from the federal government? Is that?
I
Do you know
don't
what I'm
know if
asking?
it's state funds or federal funds. I'm assuming it's state funds, but, you know, we've been working with the Opioid Operational Command Center since 2017.
Right.
And even though we didn't get a big funding like we have right now, when we have the block funding from the health department, that comes from the OOC as well, the OOCC as well.
Okay. Yeah, I remember we wrote a resolution to support you getting these grants, so I'm not sure if that was helpful now or not, but so congratulations. Questions? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am thrilled that folks at the state level recognize the success of our programs and are willing to fund it. So this is a big step for us.
It is a big deal.
Yes, so are these amounts that are being allocated to the four programs determined by request, or how are they determined, actually?
So if you look at the bottom of that page for that note, it says the request amounts are taken directly from submissions to OEM by program coordinators to implement their program. So for NAPTOWN, that would be TOLA. For Your Life Matters, that would be Captain Edwards, and they would submit what they need for their programs to us. For APD, that would be Acting Lieutenant Baden. And for OD Free Annapolis, this would be MK.
So were you asking them to submit a request based upon 189,000? I mean, it just all adds up to 189. So did they know what pot of money they were seeking? And were you able to fund them totally for what they requested, but knowing that they were going after, you were going after 189,000?
Well, we didn't go specifically after 189,000. After we received the requested amounts from everybody, it totaled 189,000. But to your other question, MK ran the process, and I'm gonna let her talk a little bit about how that process went.
So once we receive notification that funding is available for the next fiscal year, we bring the program coordinators together and we have a realistic discussion with them about how we can implement their programs fully and what that looks like financially. So we use the information provided in that funding notice. So we have a full fiscal year as the performance period. We say, what can you do in that time? What does that look like? And then we work with them to break it down so that it matches our financial and procurement process. So if you're gonna have somebody part-time for an entire fiscal year at X amount of dollars per hour, we kind of work with them to figure out what those numbers are. So we continuously work with them to figure out, are there any changes to the next fiscal year? What does, inflation look like for this? What do benefits look like? And then we put together one single application packet that includes everyone's budget. So that's how we get to the 189. So if you look at that second page, there's a column that says requested amounts. Those are the exact dollar amounts that we all came to from the program coordinators. And then you see the next column awarded. So essentially what this is saying is everything they asked for, they got, down to the penny. Obviously, there's gonna be slight modifications with stuff, but they just rounded up to 189 and then $60. So there was nothing that got denied that they requested for to fully implement their programs in their view.
So the state didn't say, well, we have 189,000, we're going to give it to Annapolis and let them divvy it up.
Right.
But what you did was to meet with the program
Correct.
coordinators and walk through what they would need for a year.
Yes,
And so and then once we had the total of 189, you made the request for that amount from the
Correct.
state.
So we never know how much they're going to give us, right? So we say realistically, what can you do within that one fiscal year? And then if the state or whoever, was the funding source came back and said, we can't do, 189, we could do 100, we would just go back and meet with them and say, this is the pot of money, can we scale down and work with them to meet the goals with the money that we've been given? But we were fully funded this year, so we don't have to have that discussion.
Would you tell us who the program coordinators are? Director Simmons did mention them, but could you be specific?
Sure. So Naptown Anti-Dope Movement is, the project coordinator for that is Tola. So he works with Kate, the chief of staff, to kind of run that program now for this current fiscal year. We have Your Life Matters, and that's Captain Edwards and his support team from the fire department. We have the APD SUD program, which is Acting Lieutenant Baden and her support staff for the police department. And then OEM is myself, and then I have my assistant project coordinator that supports.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in reading the letter from the state, in the big paragraph on it, it talks about, please be aware that OCC requires strict adherence. MK, are you running, top down? Are you in charge of each department or each programs?
So Director Simmons is overall in charge of everything as the director. I work closely with him to kind of help manage and administer that grant. So we have a close relationship with the state. We are, very aware of the grant agreement and its limitations and the way that it's structured. So before we even apply to this grant, we work with them to make sure that all the stuff we're asking for is in compliance with what the grant agreement would say. So we are fully aware of everything in the grant agreement. We've worked with the Office of Law, and we are going to have one-on-one meetings with each program to make sure that they are also aware of the limitations and the stipulations within the grant agreement as well.
Okay, and ultimately they'll be reporting to the two of you. Is that a quarterly basis? Biannual?
So as a opioid intervention team, we meet every other month. So regardless of the grant, or we meet to see what type of progress we're having, what the overdose landscape looks like, are we being effective, and do we need to change anything in our programs? We meet every other month. But with this particular grant, as with other grants, the block grant from the health department, there are expectations, there are guidelines, there are benchmarks that we all have to meet. So in the past, most of the time, everybody meets that. Some of the time, because of whatever circumstance, i.e. pandemic, they might not meet a benchmark or an expectation. So it's up to MK and I to kind of look at the overall program. We don't even look at ours, we look at all of them, and we decide how to repurpose the funding to meet our goals. And we've done that in the past, so accountability is there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, MK. To hear that coordination is just, I know, speaking for my colleagues, we don't take that for granted. But that being said, has the mayor, Director Dickinson, has the mayor's office responded at all as how this affects any of their grants, or have you gotten anything from them at all on the status of, I know that they have some grants on this effort, I believe. I was trying to call up the budget to look, but.
You're not talking about the Naptown piece, are you talking about the other grants that they're operating?
No, related to opioids, the mayor's office.
I think that OAM would be the one to ask that.
So are you talking about Naptown, as they deal with opioids and other illicit
Right,
substances?
right.
No harm, I'm not familiar with that program, but to my knowledge, they do not deal with opioids or illicit
That's separate,
substances.
yeah, and that's still in, they're going to be doing a review of the program and then fine tune their grant, I believe, on that, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Question for you all, from me. So you all receive information from us on data and statistics unique for your own ward.
Yep.
Is there anything else you need to see in reference to opioids and illicit substances on your reports?
No, they're excellent. Speaking for Ward 1, they're excellent to have, and thank you for providing them in a JPEG.
Well, do we get a citywide compilation of the data, or is it all, and I know we appreciate it being broken down by ward.
So we have the OD Free Annapolis dashboard that we encourage folks to go to. That's free. All you do is go into it. You can see what's happening citywide, right? As soon as you tap into it, it tells you what's going on citywide from January 1st till today, July 20th. And you can also look at the different wards and see about overdoses. You can see what the fatal overdose landscape is like and what drugs are being used and where they're actually being used, whether it's in the residence, whether it's on a parking lot, whether it's in the car, et cetera. So we provide that to anyone.
Well, I guess I ask in part because it would be good for all of us to see where the hotspots are. You know, if we only get our own wards, then that's all the data that we know. But if we can look across the city and see, you know, where there's a greater prevalency, then we can make sure resources are directed in that direction. I assume that's what you do.
That's what we do. And as soon as you tap into OD Free Annapolis, you see a hotspot map that pops up along with the heading of where we are with overdoses for the year from January 1. So I encourage folks listening here to go to OD Free,
Is that the website?
the website, yes.
Annapolis.gov/OD-free.
It's under Annapolis.gov?
Annapolis.gov/OD-free, and that's the landing page for all of our programs that we support. And at the bottom of the page is the dashboard.
Okay.
And it's updated frequently, so you'll always have the most recent updates before your monthly reports if you wish.
And so you can see where we are in the city, but we take it another step, and that's what we send to you at the beginning of every month, so you can examine your wards and see where any issues or problems in your wards. And I want to say this year you're going to see an improvement from last year. So 2019 was a very challenging year for us. 2020. And in 2021, we saw an improvement. We saw 30% less overdoses, 42% less fatalities, and now we're on a good ride with 2022, and we need to keep that up. And things like what you had before you will help us. And what I'm working with the health department with is that the overdose settlement funding, we have to submit a comprehensive plan, not only with the city of Annapolis, but Anne Arundel County and the health department to start drawing off those funds. So now we're fortunate enough to have the grant, and then next year, hopefully, we'll be fortunate enough to tap into those the opioid settlement funding. And that would kind of be a guide for us over the next, it's going to be effective over the next 18 years. So I think if it pans out the way I think it is, then we would get about 70,000 from that fund for the next 18 years. So kind of thinking in the future and how we're going to keep this thing going.
You know, we have been concerned about data collection. Do you get a quarterly report from all 4 of the programs? Because I think that's something that we would appreciate. And I was going to suggest, Madam Chair, that we have the program coordinators come to us in September, if not then October at the latest, to get an update. Because we don't usually get information till the end of the year, and we can't really judge what's working well and what isn't.
So the grant requires us to do reports more than quarterly. So we do reports for that, and that's on each program. I welcome that the OIT, the Annapolis OIT, comes here and reports out and shows their progress and even lets you know what they're doing. So one of the things, as MK talks to the different coordinators, maybe we do take a look at what we can put out to the alderpersons as far as the different programs, so you can see the progress and the activity of each of those programs.
Well, I think it would be important to have them come and share with us so we can keep track of, as I said, what programs are working very well and which ones are not.
Yeah, and not only that, it gives us an update prior to the budget review, so we're not, sort of asking all these questions, trying to figure out who's doing what. So to have that update with the program coordinators would be excellent. Did you suggest quarterly?
Yeah, I did, and that's why I was suggesting September, I think is the first quarterly, is it not?
What works,
Yeah.
so what works for you? You can get back to us on when that would be.
Well, Madam Chair, I was hoping that the program coordinators, Director Simmons could accompany them, or MK, I want to call you MK, Mr. Bowski. But I would like for the coordinators to come and share with us.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure we have the information through Kevin, when would be the first time that you'd have that information to share with us?
Anytime you're ready.
Okay, cool.
The coordinators can come, we can, you can talk to the city manager, he'll let them know that they need to be here.
Yeah,
And we can come, we can talk about the program for as long as you want,
yeah,
these programs,
yeah. So let's
till you
say,
get all your answers.
yeah, let's say every quarter starting in September.
But I do appreciate you all, and I do appreciate the council, because in 2020, we were not in a good place with overdoses. We had the most overdoses, and we finished the year with 28 fatal overdoses. 28 people died in Annapolis. And when I went to the council, because we didn't have the funding to put out the robust programs that we need to counter what we were doing, what was going on out there. And I went to the council, and you all agreed. You gave me $65,000, and I was able to get $35,000 from the health department, and I think that made a difference. And then we came back in this budget cycle, and you were willing to actually do a little bit more. So I appreciate your attention to this, and I appreciate your generosity in providing assistance to these programs.
Absolutely, thank you very much. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion for a favorable recommendation of SA 1-23.
Madam Chair, I'll recommend a favorable recommendation to SA 123.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next we have SA 2-23, which involves the Annapolis Police Department. So any representatives would love to have you at the table to talk about it. And it's Dr. Captain Miguez. Thank you for coming. I know you thought it was going to be at last week's meeting, Captain, but. Yeah, so I'll just read what it says on our summary is that this supplemental allocation appropriates $28,411 from the state of Maryland, again, for the crisis intervention program. The grant was not included in the budget, but no match is required.
That's correct.
So could you speak to exactly what this hostage crisis ambulance renovation stuff is?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a crisis negotiation team at the police department. We've had one for about 20 years. They respond out to situations where people are in crises. And the goal, obviously, is to de-escalate a situation and be able to help someone through their crisis and get them the help that they need. The challenge that we've had over the years is not having a vehicle that's properly outfitted for negotiations. And so when the officers have gone out to do negotiations with people, they're going out in a few different cars. They're then, circled around the hood of a car, getting their game plan together. If it starts raining, they've had to cram into one vehicle with the equipment that they're using. So we were lucky enough to get an ambulance from the fire department that was no longer useful for them, but we saw an opportunity to normally a properly upfitted vehicle for crisis negotiations could be $150,000 to $200,000. So we saw an opportunity to get at least the vehicle, and then considered this grant through the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services to pay for the upfitting. And so we applied for the grant through the state and were awarded the grant. And just over $28,000. And so it'll be upfitting that ambulance with, a generator to power things when the ambulance isn't on, the communications equipment that they need. Some of that needs to be moved from the cab into the back, tables installed in that back, passenger area of the ambulance so that they can go out to a scene and have everything that they need already, in the truck, and it'll be much more efficient for them to get out to an incident and be able to go through their work with someone to help them through a crisis, as well as being able to have everything they need instead of getting things from places in the station, loading them into cars, and then getting them out there. So it's a really good opportunity for them to be much more effective and efficient in what they do.
You had me at hello. No, my point is, I hope the public is listening in this. That is an incredible example of being fiscally responsible. Not to use construction terms, but it's a great example of adaptive reuse. It's a great example of value engineering, if you will. Mm-hmm. That way of thinking is in the interest of not only the people who need it, but being very fiscally responsible. And I just want the public to hear that. And thank you very, very much.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Questions? Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Captain Maguez. I have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
In the past, we have allocated X number of dollars for crisis response to support, I was going to say supplement, but to support our access to crisis response personnel. I don't know what that amount is. I think it's like $90,000.
I believe it's $110,000 a year, ma'am.
110. Yes. Is that sufficient, and are we getting the level of service from the county crisis response that we need?
So that's just so that you know, that's separate from what we're talking about in this grant. I would need to talk with our Acting Lieutenant Vaden, who was just mentioned in the previous pitch. As far as I know, we are getting the services that we need from them, because I would think that if we weren't, someone would be telling me, let's hold off on, signing this year's, agreement until we work some things out with them. So as far as I know, we're getting the services that we need from them. But again, I can make a note to look into that and respond back to the committee.
So maybe I need some clarification. So crisis response is separate and apart from crisis intervention?
From the crisis negotiation team. So if we get someone, typically, I shouldn't say typically, but sometimes it's someone who may have barricaded themselves into a house and is intent on harming themselves or someone else or some sort of structure.
So that's
totally
a police function.
Yes.
Sorry, I never failed.
Yes. And they may also bring crisis response in for support in something, in an incident like that. But it's our officers who have gone to training specifically for negotiating. It could be a hostage crisis, something like that. That's what this grant money is going towards, to support that function of the police department.
Okay, because it doesn't specify that. It says crisis intervention program, which led me to believe that it was part of the same. But clearly, what you're describing, the crisis negotiation
correct.
team, is
Yes.
very different. And I support this. I think it's great that we have this. And if any of us have watched NCIS or any of those, we know the value
You know just
of
how it goes.
having that equipment on hand. So absolutely. But I think the description needs to be a little clearer, and that it
Okay.
should speak to the negotiations, because that's not what it says on the form that we have.
Okay, my apologies if that was
So-
from my end.
But thank you. I still would like that other information.
Absolutely.
And don't rush back and do it today, that when you get around to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have one other question. Is there a policy on who was in the ambulance at the time? I mean, do you have a standard policy on who is in this vehicle, or is it just as a
We have
situation?
we have a policy that covers the response for the CNT team. It will probably have to be updated with the addition of the vehicle and, and the upfitting and all that.
Yeah.
We'll be updating that. Is there a concern that you have? I mean, it's,
Yeah, you know what, I'm just thinking about your own liability concerns, treating the person.
correct. Yeah, we would know. It's an ambulance with all the paramedic stuff removed.
Okay,
And then it's really just it's more of a mobile office.
okay,
So that they have a place, the negotiators have a place where they can negotiate with someone. You need a quiet place.
Yeah.
So, outside isn't ideal. There may be environmental sounds where you're not able to hear the person properly, or they're not able to hear you, which obviously is not conducive for successful negotiations. So that's just in general, to give you a picture.
Yeah.
We're not doing any sort of treatment of anyone.
Right.
In the back of the ambulance.
and you'll be labeled, it will be labeled.
Properly labeled as a police vehicle as opposed to a fire vehicle,
That's
correct?
what I was wondering, okay.
Yes, ma'am?
Any other, yes, Alderman.
May I
Flores.
follow up? This is for negotiations, crisis negotiations.
Yes, ma'am.
So the public is not going to be involved in this. It's only police professional staff, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we just should be clear that it's, we're not going to step in or anybody
no,
else.
no.
It's a
no.
police function.
Correct.
And so all the people who would have access to this vehicle are police officers or people that they may have brought in for a specific purpose, but
Correct.
it's to aid the police in their ability to negotiate.
Right,
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
right.
Just want to be clear.
You're all set? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for a favorable recommendation of SA 2-23. The right number? Yes.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion that we give a favorable to SA 223.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Captain Miguez.
I believe I'm down for the next one as well.
Oh, okay, I was wondering if you, right.
SA.
SA 3-23, we have in front of us. It is, what it reads to us is this
Madam
supplement.
Chair, pull your mic. They can't hear you all the way.
Hello. This supplemental allocation appropriates $69,117. Oh, this is another good one, from the U.S. Department of Justice for COPS, I assume is an acronym, de-escalation training. The grant was not included in the budget, but no match is required. Captain Miguez is here again to speak to this grant.
Yes, so somewhat on a related note, this one is through the federal government, the Community for Oriented Policing Services. And this one, the bulk of this goes towards, we've already been conducting de-escalation training for years. And in the recent contract that we signed with Axon for the body-worn cameras and tasers, we added in a component of de-escalation training through virtual reality equipment. And so there's an annual charge for that involved in that contract. And we saw an opportunity with this grant to pay for that portion of the Axon contract. So for 2 years, it will cover about $37,000 for that, as well as paying for some of the de-escalation instructors that we have to attend a conference and to conduct training within the police department to the members of the police department. So in the grand scheme of things with the large Axon contract, I realize it's not a big bite out of it, but every little bit helps. And, again, just trying to find places where we can offset city expenses with grant money.
Is this training offered to a specific group of your offices, or?
It's all of our officers are
Great,
trained
great.
on it.
Any questions?
Yes, I have one. Follow-up to that question. We've watched all the news about officers reacting without de-escalation training. So does this training provide our officers with the level of skill and comfort to go into any situation to de-escalate? Yes,
I would say what it does is it provides us with the tools and knowledge to de-escalate, to attempt to de-escalate any situation. It's always the best course of action, and certainly the video clips that hit the news are I would say on an extreme end of the spectrum, but even a lot of things don't rise to that level. Just a routine call for service may involve and it's something that we've done for years. It's just that there's now more training and better training to better equip our officers to do the job that we're sworn to do, to protect and serve the public. And it's like I said, it's always the best option. And at times it may not work, but it's not to, you always have to try. So it's always best to try.
Well, I think it's excellent that all of our officers are getting this training. And I hope that with the academy, the new officers are also being trained early on.
Yeah, I believe they are. As you know, we send our officers to a few different academies, and so I don't know the curriculum off the top of my head, but I would imagine any academy in this day and age is providing that training as standard.
That's very comforting to know. Thank you.
No problem.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Oh, thank you very much. So a quick question for you, or a couple of quick questions. Is this the first time that this grant has been received?
So in the 2.5 years that I've been in this position, we haven't gotten one through the COPS office. We've gotten other grants through the Burn Justice grant through the Department of Justice, but not through the COPS office. So it's the first one that I've been involved in.
All right. And kind of in conjunction with that, you say that all officers have, all of our currently employed police officers been through de-escalation training, or is it on a
Yes, so
rotating
we do our annual in-service, and there are segments of training that are required by the state of Maryland, and that's when we've done the de-escalation training, is during in-service.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
I'm only asking this because I know you're very familiar with your budget. Could you answer about what % of your budget, it isn't in, I can't see it itemized in the budget, but what % of your budget is in training?
Let's see, I would say...
Roughly is perfectly fine. It's just so important in this environment. And I think it's one of your performance measures too.
I'm going to guess that it's probably somewhere in the 3 to 5% range.
Well, so this will add to it. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for a favorable recommendation for SA 3-23.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to give a favorable, let me talk, recommendation, thank you, for SA 323.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Captain Muguez, I think you're done here, unless you know
Excellent.
something about Cars Beach, but.
Nope. Thank you very much. And I'll get that information and respond back to the committee
Sure,
with Alderman Finlayson's question.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Be safe. So next, we have SA 4-23, which is it reads as the Anne Arundel County and Capital, oh, that's the source. What does it read as? It's under, I know it's for our capital project on Cars Beach, and it appropriates $105,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund and $105,000 from Anne Arundel County. This will pay for closing and other admin costs associated with the Cars Beach acquisition. So I guess Director Dickinson,
I'll address
oh,
the
okay, I just want to
questions.
make sure, I think this is, that it matches up with what we had in the capital budget was my first question.
Well, let me give a little bit of background
Yep.
on how we got to this point that we're having to pay this additional cost. So back, I guess, a year and a half or 2 years ago when we first started thinking about buying Cars Beach, you'll recall that it was going through a development process. The owners were planning to build townhomes there, and it was actually with planning and zoning and was getting ready to go to the planning commission. So there was some urgency in purchasing that and taking it out of that development track. We weren't sure that we were going to be able to get the POS money and other funding to purchase that very quickly. So we actually hired the Conservation Fund, TCF, to purchase the property with the agreement that then once all of that funding was acquired, that we would be able to purchase it from them. We talked to DNR about that because they're the ones that handle the POS money, Program Open Space, and they were okay with that, but they said that they couldn't pay any administrative or carrying costs that were associated with the Conservation Fund buying it. So at that time, we made an agreement with the county that whatever those costs were, and that we were going to try and minimize them, but whatever those costs were, we were going to split evenly. So fast forward to now, we actually have the POS money. We have the LPPI grant that we got from the state also for the purchase. So that all that's going to go towards the purchase price, but the Conservation Fund has all their administrative costs that they've incurred over the last 2 years in negotiating the deal with the current owner, with doing all the due diligence for the property, which includes getting the survey done, getting an environmental assessment done, doing the title search, doing all those types of things. So their admin cost is $193,500. So again, the POS money can't cover that, so we have to cover it. There's some additional costs, most of it being title insurance, that make that number go up to $210,000. So since we have the POS money and we have the LPPI money, we actually don't have it as reimbursable, but we'll get it after we purchase it. We're going to do a direct assignment. So after the Conservation Fund purchases it, it automatically gets assigned over to us, and then we pay the Conservation Fund for the cost, all the costs included in the purchase. So that's what this $210,000, it's for all of the costs that DNR would not allow to be covered with POS or LPPI money that we and the county agreed a couple of years ago to split turned out to be 210,000, so we're each covering 105,000 of that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that's kind of a long and convoluted story, but it was felt like that was the best way to approach this because we had to do it quickly and didn't want to take the chance of not having the state money in time to purchase it ourselves before it went to development.
So I'm looking at the page in the capital budget, and so what category would this number?
So it wasn't included, and that's why we're doing a supplement now.
Okay, so it's a whole separate they're sort of general, that's why I ask.
Yeah.
You have, you're right, it's all POS, so it wouldn't be in that, got it.
So we can't use the POS, so what you
Got
will
it.
see on a revised page, if this is approved by council, is another funding element, a fifth funding source
Yep.
listed on the bottom table from the capital reserve fund. Oh, and the two more. The county contribution will be a separate, it'll be an other funding source. So you'll see additional funding sources there, and the expenditure schedule in the top table will also increase by $210,000.
Okay. You know why I'm asking this question. On the land acquisition, are we locked into any sort of financial structure, interest rates, anything there, or no?
No, you mean for the POS or for the POS is a grant. So all of that's paying for the acquisition. So it's going to be a cash purchase. We just need this additional piece to cover the non-POS covered costs. We would have included in the CIP if we would have known what it was going to be. If the money wouldn't have been available and say it was going to be available in 6 months, then we would have had to pay carrying costs, which is the interest that the conservation fund would incur on the money that they use for the purchase until they could get reimbursed. But because we're doing the direct assignment, there's not going to be any carrying costs. So those costs would have been much, much higher. But this is only the administrative costs that the conservation fund has incurred.
Yeah, I'm just asking in light of the environment, is there any exposure on the line item for land acquisition and construction? I mean, are we watching that?
Right.
We're good with the budget right now. Is my
Yeah, the
question.
purchase price was negotiated by the conservation fund at $6.45 million. So
Okay.
that's all set. That's
So
all
that's
covered
settled.
with
Okay.
the POS and
Okay,
the park funding.
and we'll deal with construction.
We're also getting a $2 million, we actually already have the cash, a $2 million grant from the federal government through the National Park Service that Senator Cardin arranged as an earmark. So we already have the cash for that, and that's for the development of the park. So that will be the next, after we own it, that'll be the next phase is to start the concept planning and then design and construction for whatever that's going to look like. We just don't know right now.
All right, that's all I have. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Could we get an updated CIP document with all of the numbers? I'm not reading
know
what
it's tiny kids.
is here, but is the governor or the state's grant to us included in as paying for the cost of the property?
It is, yeah. So 1.2 million was what they call LPPI, so it's local park
It's tiny.
grants. But the balance is POS. So some of the POS is our POS, the city POS. The county is contributing. I can find those numbers if you're interested. And then the rest of it is what they call stateside POS, and that's money that's controlled by the DNR secretary that they spread over the whole state.
Bless you. So what's listed on the budget document is funding that's already been promised to
Correct.
us. What
I-
we're,
If you look at that bottom table, and if you were to add those first three sources, POS, local, city, county, and stateside, add those numbers together, you would get the purchase price, the amount for the purchase price. of the
So
land.
we're talking $6 million?
$6.5 million.
6.45 is the purchase price. And then there's some ancillary costs, like I said, the survey and the environmental study and the appraisals that we had to have done. So all of those are rolled up into that. And those are all covered by the POS funding.
Okay. And so the funding that we have, the 105 in this request from the county is not POS fund monies?
It's not eligible for POS funding, right?
Okay. And then our capital reserve, how does that impact the capital reserve fund?
It'll reduce the balance that's available for future projects.
So what's the balance?
I pulled it up the other day. I can pull it up for you. It'll take me a minute. There's like a $4 million estimated
Okay, then
balance there.
That's more than I was thinking, so absolutely. Okay, thank you, I'm good.
Yeah, I guess will you give us a revised sheet, or do you just do that in the capital budget?
Well, we can either give you just a sheet that summarizes all this with a lot more detail so you can see where all
Yeah,
the
it's
funds
like-
are going. That's probably a cleaner way to do it.
Right,
I think that
works.
will be helpful for our colleagues
Yeah,
during the meeting also.
thank you very much.
And we also have the HUD-1 report, which is the closing, and that shows all these costs as well. So we can provide that because the closing's coming up relatively soon for that property.
Great, thank you very much. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for a favorable recommendation for SA 4-22.
Madam Chair, I'll make a recommendation of a favorable recommendation for SA 423.
Second.
23, right, thank you for the correction, wow. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All righty. Thank you. It's really good news. Okay, so next we're going into the leases. This is legislation. These are ordinances. And I believe Director Trader is here to speak about them or ask questions. The first one is the lease agreement for Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation, 019-22. This is for, I believe, a renewal of an existing lease. And we have a layout of where it goes. Did you want to say anything, Director Trader, on the benefits of this office being at Stanton Center? Or anything to that effect? Sure.
Is his mic on? Mr. Trader, turn your mic on, please.
Okay.
Say something.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The Anne Arundel County Workforce Development has been an asset to the Stanton Community Center and the community at large. What they do, they look for jobs, they interview people, they give training, access to a group of people and citizens who normally would not have that type of resource. They also provide internships for our department. At the Pitt Moyer Center, I have a personal intern, and at the Stanton Center, there are interns there to assist with the summer camp. And we also have other interns that are working in the Parks Division as well as the Pitt Moyer facility.
Okay, and just for clarification on the parameters of the lease, my understanding is that it is for this, looks like just, one room, but they also share use of the common areas in the bathroom, and their lease does include, it says janitorial and maintenance of their own premises. I'm not sure how that works, but
Well,
that's,
it works this way, Chairwoman. each provider at the Stanton Community Center is responsible for their own janitorial services. They can place their trash outside the door, and then that's when our janitorial personnel will remove the trash.
Okay. All right, do my colleagues have any questions on this lease?
I do have a question, of course.
Alderman
And this is a general question, Mr. Trader, for any of the leases. Has the building been repaired? Is it back into good working condition? You know, a few weeks ago we had water. We've had some other issues. So what's the status of the building as we're renting space to these nonprofits?
Well, the building is open and is in operation. Our Stanton Center, our summer camp there is flourishing. The flooding that you had referred to has been completely fixed by PW. You know, thank you, PW, for doing that in a real quick time. There are no complaints that we have had recently with each individual provider's space, office space. So each office space, to my knowledge at this point, is working positively. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Okay, that's good to hear. And maybe this is a question for Mr. Gerald, we had allocated, and the state had allocated some money to upgrade the Stanton Center. What is the status, and would that impact any of the leases that we are, or leaseors, I'm not sure which, that we have coming into the building?
So that money we've received, I guess, at least 2 years worth of funding from the state for improvements to the Stanton Center. I think the latest, and I'd have to check with Public Works to make sure, I think they've hired an engineering firm to do the design for that work, and the design is progressing. But they're looking more at the shell of the building, plus changing out like the basketball floor, adding locker rooms, adding some amenities like that. But I don't think they're going to address these specific areas other than to like improve the roof over top of them. So it's more of the shell and the roof that they're addressing.
Okay, thank you. Has the extra bathroom been, I remember there was 30,000 for
Yeah,
restroom.
that's part of the same project that's being designed.
Okay, so it's,
And if I could add, Mr. City Manager, the showers are also being included in the design.
okay, for that 30,000, that was part of that piece of it? I mean, if it's done, it's fine, but.
I do know that that was a proposal or need from our perspective, that showers were needed in the facility. And any recreational facility, showers are standard. I don't know if there's a health department code or law, but traditionally it should be there.
Well, it's one of it's our historical structure other than this building, meaning the city's. So I'm glad to hear that we're keeping up on it and, you know, helping to make sure that it's structurally sound.
Well, the Stanton Community Center historical side is approximately 115 years old.
So. David could do that for you faster.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Trader.
Welcome, you're welcome.
I just want to interject one time. David, I have a question on the lease. Would that be Ms. Leonard or Michael Lies? Could they come up for a second?
Yeah, I'll check with them.
Thank you so much. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Sure, thank you very much. I have two questions for you. Do you happen to know how long an Anne Arundel workforce has been in the space?
I don't know the exact amount of years at this time, but I would say at least 5 to 6 years.
Okay. And in that time frame, if we took out 2020, because I know that the space was closed for several months in that year, do they regularly have people in their office?
No, not regularly. in a regular business hour time frame, 5 days per week, no, that office is not filled. Nor can I say that any office is filled to that extent, with the exception of the Youth Services Bureau.
Thank you. I was going to have the same question for each of the leases, so thank you for that.
May I?
Yes.
I'm very aware of workforce development. And for Alderwoman O'Neill, they have their main facility in Linthicum.
Yes, I believe so, somewhere in Glen Burnie.
Yeah, they have two in Glen Burnie, and I visited them.
Okay.
And met with the staff, and particularly the staff that services Annapolis, whose office is in the Stanton Center. But this is one satellite location of several that they have. And I think it would be worth our council going for a tour, because they have they have an awful lot to offer. And I've been working with them to try to get them to offer more in the city of Annapolis, because they do focus a lot of their attention on Meade Village. They have an office in Meade Village, and their training center is actually in Linthicum. So they are here, but we need them even more than so.
Yeah, that's true. As Stanton Center manager, I worked hard to try to get them to come to the Stanton Community Center to give our citizens, that service. It's really a good service for the citizens who really, resume writing, how to search for a job, how to interview, all of those types of skills are being given by Anne Arundel County Workforce Development.
And they do training. You can go into one of their programs, and they have about not even half a dozen. If you want to go into construction, for example, and they will put you through a rigorous, I think it's like a 9-month training, and then help you to get employment. So they provide professional training for professional skills, also vocational type skills. So,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Assistant City Attorney Ashley Leonard is coming to the table because I just have a question on the lease. I know these leases monetarily, they're only $1, but I think it would be good policy, and I don't believe it's in here, is they are accepting the premises as built, as is. I'd like, a walkthrough to be included, and then they leave the facility, the premises broom clean. I'd like a walkthrough of that as well. I didn't see that in the lease. Would that have to be an amendment or something, or is it?
It would probably need to be an amendment. We talk about how they have to leave the area, but I don't think it specifically requires a walkthrough. So if you expressly wanted a walkthrough, that would need to be added by amendment.
Yeah, it's always good practice, the before and after in any lease.
I think we do it with some of our more,
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't want to
know.
say more commercial in nature leases, but it probably did not
yeah.
make its way. I mean, there is a legal requirement so that if they don't leave it and we inspect it, then they would have to come back and pay for damages. But it doesn't, which sort of implies that we would do a walkthrough, but it doesn't expressly state that. So I'm happy to add that if you'd like to include that as an amendment.
I would have to ask for a motion for that.
I'm not clear on what your motion is.
Yeah. I just want to amend the leases, and this would be for all of them.
Yes, it'd probably be something like prior to acceptance of the premises,
Yeah.
the parties will walk through the area and note any, note the condition of the site, and then similar language upon the termination, the parties will walk through the premises to note condition of the site and any damages that might need to be addressed. Or,
I
I'm
should have asked-
spitballing here, but it would probably be something like that.
I should have asked you, Director Trader, don't you think that's good practice so that they, the tenant won't claim that, it was in bad shape and all that? Just doesn't leave anything in dispute.
I do think it's a good idea, and then we can identify any type of damage done, and we can identify that
Yeah,
on the
of
spot.
course. Yeah,
I understand the need at the end of the lease, but and I'm not going to oppose what you're proposing, but going into the lease, I would guess that no one's going to lease a place that isn't in good shape, because, they're leasing an office, which they would expect to be able to work out of. But, if that's preferable to have a walkthrough at the beginning, walkthrough at the end.
yeah.
The walkthrough at the beginning could just give a baseline so that, I think that's what Alderwoman Cheney is thinking. It's sort of like, here's the baseline. We're just doing a brief one page. We all agree that X, Y, and Z, this is how the site exists. And so then when you do the walkthrough at the end, you can sort of do a comparison maybe. Sometimes people include photos with the walkthroughs. So that way, then you're not even working on words. You just take a picture of the premises at the beginning, take a picture at the end, and
It also helps, maybe there's some outlets that aren't working and they, that kind of thing, so just,
Or nail holes in the wall, or.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I know they're only paying $1, but things, should work and all that, so.
And I think we have been very good, Mr. Trader, in making sure that the facility is in a workable and acceptable condition. And I know in the past, when we have had issues, they've been immediately addressed. Because as I said, the nonprofits want to be able to work out of the facility. And so things that hinder them doing their work is a problem for them in addition to for us.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I guess that's a separate motion, if I could have a motion to amend the lease so that there's an informal walkthrough before and after move-in.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. And is it going to go under use of premises, number 2 on page 2?
it could. I don't have it quite that memorized in my head.
Yeah,
but
I know, and
What?
well, as chairs of rules and.
I would expect that would be.
But I can put it under 2. That is fine.
Yeah,
Under use of premises, page 2 of the lease agreement.
yeah. It might, yeah, we'll leave that to your wordsmith.
I have a general recollection, so that is fine.
That's enough for you to proceed
Yes,
on?
that's enough for me to
Okay.
proceed.
All right, all in favor, did we already vote on it? I think we did. We'll vote again. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Madam Chair, but don't we need to
Yes.
know?
About the ordinance itself.
No, I was asking about the amendment. Ms. Leonard, are you going to tell us where it should go?
Yes, I will. I mean, I can pull it up right now if you want, and I can take a look at it.
I mean,
or
I don't
can
know
let
whether
you
we
know.
need to know at this moment, but before Monday.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
before
I will. I'll
our,
take care of it today.
It's not on the agenda? Oh, okay.
Oh, because housing didn't meet.
Okay, so it's not on the agenda, so we have,
I can still let you know today, tomorrow at the latest.
and it has come to rules, so plenty of time.
All right.
So, so Madam Chair, are you ready for a motion on, I'm still
Yes.
on the lease, on 01922?
Yes, for it.
I'll recommend a favorable recommendation for 01922 as amended. We did vote on the amendment, didn't we?
I'll second.
As amended.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next one is 020-22, and this is the lease in the same property for the dental center. And Director Trader, do you wish to speak of the advantages of having this located in the Stanton Center?
In a word, outstanding. One word is outstanding, the service that they provide to our citizens, not only in the city of Annapolis, but Annapolis County-wide, is extraordinary. And they do it with pleasure, they do it with care, they do it with joy. And there's nothing else I can say much more than that, other than
Mr. Trader, you need a mic.
Do I have to repeat that?
Just
Never-
say outstanding.
Outstanding. Nevertheless, my only concern is when are they coming back? And we do not know at this particular time. But we are definitely saving the space for them.
Yeah, I'm very happy they get a second floor window office. Ms. Leonard, do we have to amend it the same for all these?
I would think,
Yeah, they're all
yes.
separate ordinances, so.
Yeah, since they're all separate ordinances, you probably have to do a motion for
Okay, why
each.
don't we get that out of
Not
it?
for my purposes, but
No, I know. Why don't we get that out of the way, that I'll entertain a motion to amend this to have the walkthrough before and after the move-in and move-out. Same as before.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Further discussion
I
before?
do have a question.
Yes, Alderwoman O'Neill.
Thank you very much. Director Trader, so we don't know when they're coming back. Have they applied for this lease, or are we just granting because they were in there before?
We are just granting it because they were there before. And keep in mind, all of their equipment is still in place. You know, they have not removed their equipment. It's all there.
So have we had any discussions with them?
I have had an email correspondence, but not any face-to-face discussions.
Is there any worry that they may not be coming back and that we're granting a lease to somebody that has no?
I haven't received any indications of that. But to your point, I will pursue a meeting to discuss in detail what their proposals are, what their intentions are.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, just a point of information from me. As Director Trader has said, the dental department division has been there for many, many years. One of my close friends is one of the dentists that works out of there. They are still recovering from COVID. They still have restrictions under Luminous as to where they are allowed to go. You know, they still test their doctors every week to, make sure that they're in the community, but they're healthy. So I don't think we should be alarmed by the fact that they're not there yet. Hardly any of our nonprofits are functioning as they did prior to COVID. And the dental division is one of those. They do very hands-on, clearly, work. And when they are ready, they'll be back in there, I am sure. Thank you.
And do we have a mass policy at Stanton now, or probably not? It's-
No, we don't have a mask
No.
policy,
Right.
but our policy is that we recommend masks to be worn, but it's not mandatory.
But they could always.
They do.
They do. Okay. All right. At this time, I'll entertain a motion, a favorable recommendation for O20-22, the dental office.
Madam
lease.
Chair, I'll make a recommendation that we give a favorable recommendation to O2022.
All in favor signify by saying
Need
aye.
a second?
Oh, second. No, go ahead, Karma.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and this just leads me to somehow.
Is that unanimous?
Yes, was that a
Sorry,
yes?
yes.
Yes. To Kia, are we able to extend past 12:30 if need be? Because we probably want to get through this agenda and we might not. Okay. Okay, the next one is O23-22, the lease agreement for We Care and Friends.
O22?
I missed the Annapolis Arts District, O22-22. Yeah, this is for the Annapolis Arts District. And in discussion, I'll just start off right away and ask, who occupies this? Is this for one person, or
It's for one person.
can we say who that is publicly? I guess, right? Yeah? Right, you said okay, yeah. Who would that be? Would be Eric Evans, or,
That's correct.
okay, and have we verified that he does not have an office elsewhere? At the,
I did not verify that. He came to us with,
we did?
with the need, with the
Okay.
request for space, and
Okay.
we honored it.
okay, so that, okay. I thought at one point he had an office at the visitor center, but he might have just been using that temporarily. Any questions on this lease?
I do.
Yes.
Again, so is this, are we going forward, or has he requested in 2023 for this lease to continue?
Yes, he has requested to continue his lease.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to O2222.
Oh, can we
Don't
amend
forget
that
your
as
amendment
as
as well,
amended?
yeah.
The amendment again?
Oh, I'm sorry. As amended. I guess I have to do the amendment first. So I'll move the amendment, which speaks to a walkthrough at the beginning and at the end of the lease agreement.
I'll second.
All in favor of favorable recommendation for the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Motion for the ordinance as amended, I'll accept.
I'll move favorable recommendation for O2222.
I am not willing to second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm beginning to talk about like Yoda.
Noes?
You have to say no,
No.
or if you're abstaining, whatever. All righty. It's getting crowded in here. Let's see, who else? We Care and Friends. O23-22, We Care and Friends is the next and final lease that we're looking at. Director Trader, do you want to speak to the advantage of having them located in the Stanton Center?
Yes, ma'am. The We Care and Friends has been a fixture in the community for decades. Under the creation and guidance of Mr. Larry Griffin, We Care and Friends have done a lot of things for the community. Its Thanksgiving event is legendary. It provides foods, it provides clothing, it provides other grassroots family type services for the community. And I think We Care and Friends is the one organization that brings attention to the Stanton Community Center like no others. The history of it is just tremendous, and it's very good for the Stanton Center, the community, and the city at large.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on this? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Director Trader, is their office space and location the same?
It's the same as it was 2 or 3 years ago. Originally, the We Care and Friends had 2 offices, where the Arts District and the Anne Arundel County Workforce Development are now. Those were the original spaces for We Care and Friends, but they moved to where the medical clinic used to be. And the medical clinic, as you know now, is down the street. So
So
yes.
this is where they were last year?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And is it the same size space as they had last year?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I will recommend an amendment for a walkthrough at the beginning and at the end of the lease.
Second.
All in favor for the amendment recommendation signify by saying aye.
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 And I will make a recommendation that we give a favorable recommendation to O2322.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. They get a window office too. All right, that takes care of the Stanton Center leases. Next piece of legislation we have is O28-22, which is parking in metered spaces. And that is sponsored by myself. Let me give you some background on this. In the implementation of Park Mobile or, any of these pay meters, et cetera, the businesses, specifically hair salons, have asked for the 2-hour limit to be increased to 3 hours. So what this ordinance does is it, per the law office's guidance, just gives that directive to the city manager to increase the limit, and I'll read it. Let's see, I can read it as to how it says that. The last sentence on the first page, the last lines 43 and 44 is really the meat of the ordinance. The maximum time allowed for parking in any space herein described shall be set by the city manager in consultation with the director of the City of Annapolis Department of Transportation. That would be Dr. Dua. And the city manager is hereby authorized to promulgate such rules and regulations as may be necessary to implement this provision. So, are there any questions?
Madam Chair, I don't know what that means. Are we empowering the city manager to set time, parking limitations on all of our streets?
This, okay. This is specific to parking meters, if that answers your question.
So,
Because it's a separate code section, basically. It's under,
so does that mean it's flexible? Like this weekend it may be 2 hours, but next week it's 3 hours?
well, that could happen, but the reason is, for example, the city manager, instead of putting in the code, we want this stretch of meters on West Street to be 3 hours, in the code, and that may change, a year later because some of the businesses moved out and there's no need. The practice of meters is to be 2 hours, so they're short-term parking, but there are some exceptions where 3 hours is asked for. So this gives the city manager, if the request comes in, then the city manager, in consultation with Dr. Dua, can say, yeah, we can increase those meters on West Street to 3 hours. And then I believe it would have to come before rules in city government, though, because it would have to be promulgated. Am I correct on that, city manager, Jarrell?
Yeah, so there should be rules that would be promulgated, and they would have to come to Rules Committee, like all rules have to,
Yeah.
now have to come before you. I wouldn't, and I can only speak for myself, not future city managers, but I can't imagine that it would be changed on a daily basis or for a short term, for a special event or anything like that. I think it would be more changed permanently, and then check and see how it's working and change back or keep it depending on how it works. But all those will be put together in the regulations that will be developed by Mr. Malinoff.
So it sounds like a business, a hair salon, could make the request for the whole block. How do we inform the public? I mean, that sounds like sign changes, sounds like a lot of changes would need to take place. Would it be easier if we said on an annual basis or something that would let everybody know that we're reevaluating this periodically? I mean, I'm just concerned about the cost if you're going to make changes. I'm concerned about who gets those changes, because your hair salon might get the change. Well, I mean, that was the example you gave.
Yeah.
But the tattoo parlor down the street, didn't. It just sounds kind of
Well,
awkward to me.
this is concurrent with us transitioning to Park Mobile. So as far as your question on cost, it's really negligible. It's just the reprogramming these meters to be, in lieu of 2, there'll be 3. I expect if we do a stretch, of West Street, I can't place what the signs say now other than just having the meters, but I expect that there might have to be a sign, 3-hour parking, maybe.
I think so.
So, yeah, I mean, the restaurants have asked for it, but we didn't want to do a blanket 3-hour increase because from experience, sometimes that gets, downtown sometimes gets taken advantage of.
Yeah, I think an important issue too is that you gain some consensus from your neighbors, right? So, maybe the hair salon wants 3 hours, but the comic book store next door doesn't want, they want more frequent turnover. So I think that'll be the bigger challenge, is how do you gain consensus on these changes from the people, from the businesses on the block? And so that'll be an important part of this too, is to work with the businesses before the change is made to get some consensus.
It would be more comfortable knowing that there is discussion and a consensus of the area that we're considering.
Yeah.
So you mentioned having procedures in place. Should we be supporting this without those procedures in place?
Well, it's sort of a chicken and egg thing, right?
We don't know yet.
Because
which ones.
usually after the legislation passed, then you put together the implementing regulations, rules and regulations, that then would go through that whole, public process, including the rules committee. So I think that's the normal procedure, is to pass, but it couldn't be implemented until the rules and regulations are in place.
Okay, so does that say that at the end of and maybe we should amend it to say that rules, because I'm not seeing it anywhere, that the...
Yeah, I'm not sure you need to put that language in the code. That's just the way it needs to be. I mean, we need to follow the rules and regulations requirements to implement this, and that's already in the code, that all rules and regulations go through the council and go through a public hearing.
I'm sorry. Is what? So should that be a reference?
No,
Oh, okay. Ms. Green was just giving me the code, and it's 0621, where it speaks to it. The
And probably-
rules, the rules piece of it.
Right. Yeah, the language it has here is city manager is hereby authorized to promulgate such rules and regulations as may be necessary to implement this provision. So you're right, it is a chicken and egg. That's great, because at rules, there will be a public hearing where adjacent businesses, et cetera, would, and this is triggered by, it's more downtown, that's why I got this, Downtown Annapolis Partnership came to us, and Hillary has gotten enormous amount of calls on the hair salons. So again, it could be very piecemeal, and that's why it was preferred to just give the authorization to the city manager, put it in rules and regs, and have the public hearing once we get some kind of list.
I didn't see that this was referred to the Rules Committee. It's not. we would like for it to be referred. So what do we go about?
You go about doing it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it goes in line with trying to make the code general enough that it doesn't have to be revised or be too specific. Maryland Avenue comes to mind. They may want the 3 hours, but then decide that it's, not, it's being taken advantage of or something, so. Okay, any other questions? No. Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for favorable recommendation of 028-22. And do I have to state, you've got that it goes to rules, right? Yeah, okay.
I'll make a motion to give a favorable recommendation of 02822.
I will second it for the sake of this committee, but that vote may not hold when it comes to the Rules Committee.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right. And just make a note at rules, we may want to make sure Hillary attends that, because she's the recipient of a lot of these requests. Just maybe a mental note. As in her capacity as
And the city manager.
ombudsman. Oh, obviously, yeah, the city manager. All right, the next is 030-22, Building and Construction Fire Prevention Code. Okay, I'm sponsoring this as well. So the objective of this was, as you know, we passed a sprinkler bill specific to where we have these lateral lines and really trying to get these buildings sprinkled, trying to make it as easy as possible for the businesses, telling them that we have a loan at 1%, large, a long payoff term. We have the lateral line that we're basically not charging them for, et cetera, et cetera. However, it passed, and then the businesses, some of the key businesses, about 3 of them, we met with, me being the city manager and myself, and we heard them, and we really want these buildings to be sprinkled. So we said, okay, what is the problem here? And they said, well, $20,000 is not really very much. And we agree. I mean, some of these sprinkler numbers go anywhere from 60,000 to 120 plus. I mean, it really depends on the difficulty of their building. They're very receptive to getting it done. They just advise that the loan amount, it would be great. Also, there were some other parameters. They asked that that if they can't get a sprinkler system in there and they use a comparable approved suppression system, that they're still eligible for this loan. And so we have that in there. We also increased the loan from $20,000 to $40,000, and if they use a minority contractor, we increased that from $25,000 to $45,000. In turn, in this budget, assuming that, allowing that, we have in the sprinkler revolving fund $400,000. So it's anticipated that this should cover 10 applications a year over a 5-year period. We should get this done. So with that, and I know this has been an issue, we asked that the how do we put it here? The electrical assistant revolving fund, and I did speak to Alderman Arnett about this again, is we're asking that it be removed and just all be in this one fund to sprinkle buildings. And the reason being that this electrical assistance revolving fund, it's kind of obsolete, and also that it hasn't been used in the past, and a business or a property owner won't do that project in and of themselves. They won't say, I think I'm going to replace all of my wiring. They usually do it, according to John Manassa, who couldn't be here, they usually do it as part of a renovation. No one has taken the initiative to just gone in and do that on their own. So we thought it would be to focus on one thing and get it done. We thought we would put all the funding in one place, which would be the sprinkler fund. The last thing we did was there was language in the bill that we passed that said when we continue to install these lateral lines to the curb or wherever is close to the storefront as possible, we gave them 3 years. We're changing that back to 5 years. So as we continue to rip up the streets and do whatever else, water line, whatever, we would put in these lines, and then those buildings would have 5 years to take advantage of this revolving fund, if they need the loan. Some opt not to. So, yeah, we've gotten, like, for example, before we implemented this, we did have one application come in, and I think he got $50,000, but we didn't have the limit at the time. So did I cover everything, City Manager, that the businesses asked for?
Yeah, I think so. And I would just second what you're saying, that the sprinkler projects are more standalone. And it's convenient if they can do those during the tenant improvements, but generally it happens as standalone projects, whereas the electrical are almost always part of a tenant improvement project and not a standalone project. And
I have to thank Mitchell, because she'll have to update it, but she has been doing a big public, this is on the city website now, and then once this passes, we're going to be handling, making pamphlets and getting them to the businesses. Any questions? Alderman Finlayson, I didn't hear you.
Oh, thank you. I am not comfortable with, well, first of all, your entire explanation was about sprinklers. And this legislation is attempting to eliminate the electrical assistance. And I know I heard Mr. Manassa say that there haven't been many requests for this. But there may be some, and to completely eliminate it and to turn all the funding over to the sprinkler system program, while that program may be necessary, while the additional funding is necessary, and there's no question about that, I have a serious concern about taking the funds from the electrical assistance. We will not be prepared if someone does come to us and ask for the same kind of assistance. And it's not advertised. Folks, we went through great lengths to help the community recognize the sprinkler program that we had and encourage their use. And we still haven't had a ton of people making that request. So I'm not clear on why I know your focus is on the sprinkler system. So add more money in some way, and we should have done it during the budget process, to the sprinkler fund, but don't take the money from the electrical that we may need. So I am going to oppose this ordinance. I am strongly encouraging my colleagues to keep the funding for electrical, and if we need additional funding for sprinkler, then we come up with it.
Right, well, first, to answer your first question, it's addressed because the paragraph reads sprinkler and electrical assistance revolving funds. I don't want it to be interpreted as a competition. I'm just being a realist. I'm being a realist that no property owner with closed-in walls is going to just take on that project alone. They will do it as part of a renovation, or they will do it as part of sprinkling the buildings. Yes, my focus is on sprinklers because that basically will upgrade the building where it needs to be. But I'm just saying that it's obsolete almost. I totally get it. It's like asbestos. It was a big deal at the time. And this was a big deal at the time. But in speaking with John, it's, it usually happens in the course of a renovation, so I don't see the need for a targeted, not having this is not going to prevent them from doing it, I guess is my point. Not having this fund will not prevent them from doing electrical renovations, and Director Dickinson has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Right now, the code reads as if there's two different funds. There is only one fund, and it's called the Sprinkler Assistance Revolving Fund. So there is no cash set aside for electrical assistance revolving loans at all at this point. And if we want, because Alderwoman Finlayson spoke like there was a pot of money sitting there for that. There is nothing there right now, and we have never had an application for one. So there is no fund called this Electrical Assistance Revolving Fund, and there's no cash set aside right now.
Okay, then I thought I read that we were changing the fund from 20,000 to 40,000. So where's the additional 20,000 from?
We're changing the loan amount. We're able to, in the budget, we increase the sprinkler, what are we calling it? The sprinkler revolving fund. We increased that budget to $400,000, which then allows us to give out an increased loan amount. That's where the 20 changes to 40,000.
The 20 to 40 is the maximum amount of a loan we can loan out of that fund.
So the fund, but today, someone could come and apply and get electrical out of that same pot of money as sprinkler.
I can't answer that question. The fund is called the Sprinkler Assistance Revolving Fund. And I've never had an application for a sprinkler or for an electrical assistance. I'd have to look to see if there's an application out there for that purpose. And if there was, then we'd have to determine where to get the funding from.
Why don't we do this? Because I don't think there's any harm in, if a property owner wants to take on rewiring and specific to, so I don't even know what the language is, if the type of wiring is, then it's, I think of it as almost harmless because I don't, that those funds can be available. I don't think it will happen, but it doesn't hurt to just keep the current code language, which I think we have some confusion on what that is. I'm revising language that just calls it,
Well, let me understand. Currently, the title is 17.20.110 Sprinkler and Electrical Assistance Revolving Fund. I think I just heard Ms. Dickinson say it is one fund, it is not two separate.
I'm looking for the code section right now. I thought it said funds.
Right, okay.
That there will be a Sprinkler Assistance Revolving Fund and an Electrical Assistance Revolving Fund. Because I think it says a plural in the code, which sounds like there's supposed to be two funds.
Okay.
But right now, from an accounting perspective, all we have established is a Sprinkler Assistance Revolving Fund.
So that's, yeah, you're correct, Director Dickinson. The existing code, 17.20.110, calls it as sprinkler and electrical assistant revolving funds. And this legislation so marries up with what exists, which is the one sprinkler assistant revolving fund. I can't speak to why it became one fund. It's kind of news to me, but.
Well, it sounds like an accounting issue to make it one fund. I am looking at a portion of the code, 17.20.160, and if you can scroll up, there's an application there, Sprinkler and Electrical Cost Assistance Program.
Where are you, Alderman Finlayson? She in the,
Annapolis.gov, Finance Office,
oh,
Sprinkler and Electrical Cost Assistance Program.
Does the,
And
what,
the application is for.
the application, what does the application say? Does it
It's the
say
title-
sprinkler
It
loan?
says Sprinkler and Electrical Cost Assistance Program. That makes it sound like it's one program.
is that the letterhead that they come in on?
That's the application.
I'll have to see what you're looking at. The application or the description of the program?
I was reading the title of, in the description, it says, City of Annapolis' Sprinkler and Electrical Cost Assistance Program
Okay, so
Guidelines.
it's,
Yeah.
when that was established, we
just
could be
does-
setting
yeah,
that
that's the objective.
program and application up for two different purposes. I'm just saying that the code speaks of two different funds, and there is only one fund right now, and that's the sprinkler fund. So if the Office of Law may have to advise on whether I need to establish a separate fund, and then if we want to allocate some of the funds for that particular purpose. Or if we just want to have one fund, one program, all loaning out of the same fund, then that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, let me propose an amendment here. It's pretty simple, that we will just have, it will read 17.20.110, Sprinkler and Electrical Assistance Revolving Fund, FUND, period. Line 37, well, it reads, the Director of Finance shall establish and maintain a sprinkler assistance,
I'm telling you.
Sprinkler and electric.
and, yeah, just combine the two. One fund, sprinkler assistance and electrical assistant revolving fund. Probably reads better, sprinkler and electrical assistance revolving fund.
Well, it should be Sprinkler and Electrical
Assistance revolving fund. Okay?
Okay.
Ms. Takia?
No, she's,
Oh, okay. And then on strike and upgrading of electrical assistance. That's the solution then.
And so you, under that recommendation, we would still be considering requests for electrical assistance
Yeah,
loans.
sure, I mean, they
Okay.
come in.
All right.
And so, so we will still strike the electrical assistance revolving fund because we won't have it anymore. It will all be under this fund.
Thank you.
See, and just to reiterate what I was talking about on the program, if you look at the purpose of that document you just gave me, the Director of Finance shall establish and maintain a sprinkler assistance revolving fund and an electrical assistance revolving fund. So even in this document that was created when this was established, it talks about two different funds, and the second one has never been established.
and change lines.
So we can change the purpose.
You can, the council can change it to one fund, you can make it the fund for both purposes and loaning out of the same fund. Is the criteria for each one, I don't know if the criteria for electrical assistance is different than the sprinkler, because I've never had to review one before.
Madam Chair, I'm just talking to Kim
Yeah,
through the
thank you.
changes we made
Yeah.
on page 1.
Thank you.
Are we on page 2 now?
Yeah, 2 gets a little complicated. Jody, help me with this if it's not correct. So we're making, we're making one fund. We're making it one fund and we're titling it Sprinkler and Electrical Assistance Revolving Fund.
Taking the S off the funds in line 30.
Yeah, so, okay, but then
I'm gonna have to look back at the whole code section to see if anything else needs to be changed within the,
yeah, right now we're just sort of wordsmithing it. Where are you now? Are you on page 2?
Okay, now I'm on page 2.
Yeah.
Did we do anything with lines 2 through 5?
That's what I'm wondering if we can still strike this out.
Well, why would we, that's one of the
Okay,
requirements for the electrical portion of this fund.
there you go. The electrical portion of this fund will operate by making low-cost loans to developers or property owners of older buildings in the historic district that do not currently have modern electrical systems installed at the time of application. Whatever I just said.
So you want to add the electrical portion
Portion.
of this revolving fund.
Correct.
So after line 2, what's this? Portion of this.
Okay,
Revolving fund will, ...
okay.
Okay, then line 8,
Is the word,
Take off the strike.
so just unstrike line 8
and change funds to fund.
and take the S off of, there's already a strike through on the S.
Oh, right. Okay,
So just unstrike
no, that's fine. Just,
and electrical assistance.
yeah, funds is fund, okay. This existing personal loans may not be made for new buildings, but may only be
Right there. Keep that strike through.
okay, keep, unstrike 18.
Line 18.
Okay,
I say we unstrike 18, lines
Correct.
18 and 19.
18 and 19, correct. Okay, I think what we do in 23 and 24 is, let me just read it out. Eligible costs that may be funded by a loan are limited to the installation of electrical systems in the historic district. I don't think we need to say for the electrical assistance revolving fund, because it's not applicable anymore.
So we unstrike on line 24, beginning with the word for, the electrical assistance revolving fund.
Let's see if that makes English sense. Cost
I
directly.
say we unstrike the word and. Eligible costs that may be funded.
Yep, okay, we're good for the rest,
So we're gonna unstrike the word and.
right? Because they're not separate anymore.
So
Yeah, okay, so loans,
keep the strike through for electrical. Unstrike lines 23 and 24 down to district. And unstrike the word and. Is that correct?
yeah. Do you want to say how it reads?
Okay.
I think we're,
The eligible costs that may be funded by a loan are limited to the installation of electrical systems in the historic district and costs directly related to the installation of sprinklers, including design, labor, and materials and hookups to the city, ... all those the same.
Yep.
And we're keeping the word that's inserted,
yes, bingo, bingo.
design.
Yep. Okay, so the next loan stuff stays the same. That's the biggest objective of this legislation, is to increase the loan amount for whatever they do. So I don't know if there's no language of fund here. It's just about the loan. So I don't think any of this has to be changed
Well,
on the loan amount.
may I ask, this goes back to a previous question. We're going from 20,000 to 40,000 for the loan capability.
Yeah.
Does that impact the amount that's in the fund?
Yes, there is an amount in the fund, and if we had several $40,000 loans go out, it would deplete it. There are payments coming back in over the 5-year term of the loan, but if we had a lot of new loans, we might deplete it before we got payments in to cover new loans.
So is it prudent to introduce this amount when we may very well not be able to accommodate the need or the request?
Well, the same would have happened with the sprinklers. We would have had a lot of sprinklers coming in because of this requirement that these buildings get sprinkled. And if we run low on the funds every budget year, the council can decide whether or not we want to send more general fund monies to that fund to support more loans.
Yeah. Yeah, how this worked was when we met with the businesses and, they said what the cost range were, we thought, okay, a loan not to exceed 40. And so this budget cycle, we married up with that and said, okay, if we're giving out a loan for 40,000, we're giving them 5 years. How many properties do we have? About 40 properties to do. We divided that by 5 and thought, okay, that then averages 8 to 10 properties, applications a year. So this loan amount marries up to what is currently in the budget. To Director Dickinson's point, if they all come in at once, we run out of money, and then we have to reevaluate next year.
Or take them first come, first serve, and they can wait for their loan.
Yeah, over a 5-year period, we're not thinking they'll all come in at once. We couldn't, we would have to put in a lot of money in the budget all at once.
So whatever you're using the fund for, if you're using it for both purposes, I'll have to look back at the budget to see how much you said the number 400, I'll have to go back and see what that is. We put additional general fund money in 23 to help with this purpose, because we had the legislation that requires certain buildings to be sprinkled. So we put some more funding in.
Yeah.
If for whatever purpose, electrical or sprinkler, as people come in to apply for the loan, if there were several and they depleted what was there, we just have to wait and not do any more new loans until the new budget year or till more payments came back in to fund it.
And if it's a standalone electrical, it's not going to be 40,000. It may not even be 20,000. It's going to be less if they just want to do electrical.
I don't know what electrical system costs.
Yeah.
So
this is a pot of money we start with.
I'm still not clear what's marrying up to what. Did we put adequate funds into this account during the budget process to double the amount of the loan?
Yes. Yes.
So what are those amounts?
We have $400,000 in the sprinkler fund, and the judgment was that we could then have a loan not to exceed 40,000. And the logic was based on we were giving them 5 years. How many buildings need this? Worst case, 40. I think there's 30 something. So we divided that, by 5 and said, well, how many does that average a year? Could be 8 to 10 applications a year. So we thought, assuming that they all asked for the maximum, we thought starting out, the $400,000 would take care of worst case 10 applications. Next year another 10. But again, the money isn't coming back as quickly as ideally it says revolving fund, but the money isn't paid back as quickly. So we'll see where we are year after year.
Madam Chair, that's not my question, though. I understand all of that.
Okay.
Your
You asked for it.
justification. My question was, how much did we increase that fund during the budget process this year?
It was a 250,000 and we increased it another 150,000.
I'm going to have to go in and see what that transfer was. I can't
Yeah.
see from the schedules I'm looking at. So give me a minute.
So either
was
way,
an
we didn't
amendment.
double it. At the same time, we're looking to double the loan amount. I would think that those numbers would be comparable, at least in my mind. If we're going to double the loan, then we should double the amount that's in there.
Well, the money in there, they're skewed because the money in there was 300 plus thousand. We increased it. It wasn't a double and double. We increased, the first thing is we figured out how many businesses were remaining and then what the worst case scenario would be. And then we went back to the budget and said, we're going to need at least another, to make it $400,000. It didn't start out at 200 and we doubled it to 400,000.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know that we changed the legislation to require them to add sprinklers. Correct.
Within a 5-year period of time,
Within a 5-year period of time. And when did that legislation go into effect?
last fall.
Last fall. And since last fall, how many people have requested the funds from the loan? Do we have that number?
No new ones. We had one in process
Yeah.
that started back in December.
Yeah.
And we've recently finished that and made the loan, but only one in the last 6 months. So I don't know if it was a response to this or if it was, I
Yeah.
think they actually got in before the new changes took effect.
Right. Yeah, that was Mr., if I can say it, Mr. Rubino's loan. Here's an example, that new building where the retrofit stuff is coming in. I think they are doing it, and I think some are doing it without applying for a loan. That's nice. They're not all going to take a loan out.
But this is saying that of the 40 businesses, we could definitely do 10 a year for the next 5 years with this revolving fund. And history tells us that not all 10 technically have requested it.
Right. So let's see if we can say that another way.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would go forward to say that I believe that the 400,000 is currently sufficient for what we've seen historically, and that it would be something that we should revisit if we all of a sudden have a run on applicants.
Correct.
So are you saying there is no need to increase the amount to 40,000, or there is?
I believe that there's a need to increase the amount to 40,000, especially in light of the last 3 months with the inflation and the cost of have services and products. I believe that would be prudent of us to give the opportunity for the shop owner, store owner, restaurant owner to get that loan, but it does not appear that we have them jumping all 40 of them within the next 6 months. And I think that if we see a change in that, then it would be prudent to take a look and a revisit to it. But I believe that we can accurately increase the loan amount with the funds that we currently have in there.
Do we know what it costs to cover a building? What is the cost, and what percentage of the cost is the $20,000? Are these jobs being accomplished with $20,000?
No,
What is the amount?
okay. But as I started to say in the beginning, the objective of this legislation was to really give as much as we could to get these downtown sprinkled. We met with building owners after the legislation was passed, 3 of them, and they said, $20,000 loan will not get us hardly anything. It will get us something, but not that much. the pricing of sprinkler varies considerably. I mean, some are as low as 60, some are over 100. I mean, they could go over 150. It depends. That's a variable. The other variable is some businesses, some property owners may not need a loan. But we are giving them a 5-year mandate. We're telling them they have to sprinkler. So we want to make sure that we can accommodate as many as possible and meet their needs, not make this seem draconian, if you will. So the objective of this legislation was to increase the loan amount to $40,000. I knew this before budget finalization. We met with the businesses after the legislation was passed. So I knew this, and I thought, oh, okay, they want $40,000 to be available. How much do you think we would need for the first year to implement this? So we calculated it would, 400,000 would get us 10 loans, and thought that was an educated guess. And we passed that in the budget. So now this legislation codifies that.
How much does it cost for the businesses with whom you met to sprinkle their buildings?
Do you have the amount that Mr. Rubino?
I would not use.
I know.
We should be
that's what I
talking
mean.
names and amounts in this forum. I'm not sure the Office of Law would have to.
Yeah, they had gotten quotes. They didn't commit to any, they didn't show me any quotes. A little bit of background, I was, since Chief Stokes, we've had sprinkler meetings with all department heads and everybody, and the sprinkler subcontractor was there and showed us some quotes, and they're all, for lack of a better word, they're sort of all over the place. And that was the frustration, was we had this sprinkler initiative and nothing, after the yacht fire, nothing was being done. So that's when it was decided. I don't know if you remember when everybody testified and said, look, this has got to get done. How are we going to do it? But to answer your question, they seem to think that 40,000 was better than 20.
Okay. So the 40,000 does not cover the cost of sprinkling a building?
Not entirely, no.
No, not necessarily, and it depends on the project and the building. They vary widely, and it's all eligible costs, and those eligible costs are defined in the guidance we give them, up to a cap. Now, there didn't used to be a cap. The legislation that was introduced earlier set the $20,000 cap because we thought we'd have a lot of extra activity. Now we're proposing to raise the cap to 40 because the $20,000 cap was too low.
Yeah, the other thing, Alderman Finlayson, is that without this, we had an application that exceeded 40,000, and that, our money would run out more quickly. So I think we'll gather a lot of data this year and see, what the costs are, and see how reasonable this budget allocation is and the loan amount. But we got to start somewhere. So we have an amendment to recommend, if we can at least do that right now before, I guess that will all be in one amendment. Do I have any motion to recommend the amendment to combine it into one fund addressing both sprinkler and electrical?
Madam Chair, do we want to finish with the amendments and take them all together? We've had several, it's probably more than half a dozen changes.
Oh, I didn't know if we could put those all under one amendment, because
we're doing a lot of unstriking, and so I think those could all be under one amendment.
Yeah.
So if we finish the last two sections, if there's a need to make a change.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing was
So you
definition.
changed it from 3 to 5 years, which you want to keep.
Yes.
And then in C, is this still applicable? Applicants to install alternate suppression systems are not eligible to receive assistance from the sprinkler fund?
We said that they were going to be. So yes, crossing that out.
I'm sorry?
Well, it's,
Early on, she said that we were approving suppression systems falling under this, and an alternate
We're saying,
comparable
yeah,
suppressionist system.
yeah, it's not applicable because now we're saying that if you have an alternate system, you can receive it.
So do we want to leave that strike through?
Yes.
What's an alternate suppression system?
Like a dry, if they find out that they can't do a wet system, sprinkle, they might opt to do a dry system or something comparable. I mean, right?
Yeah, like if you have a lot of electronic equipment, you don't want to spray water on it, so they use what's called a halon system, where it sprays halon gas and that suppresses the fire instead of water.
Yeah.
So that would,
They're pretty rare.
Yeah.
Usually they're in like high-tech buildings, not businesses, but this would allow for that if that's what's needed.
so if they can't use a wet system, we don't want to encourage them, or we don't want to assist them to use the alternate system.
I think we do.
No, that's,
I think that language allows
Right,
for
that's-
alternative systems.
So are we unstriking this? It says they're not eligible for assistance.
they are eligible for assistance. If they use an alternate system, they can still apply for the loan.
Okay, so we're unstriking lines 21 and 22. Because this says they are not eligible to receive assistance.
We are striking it because they are eligible. Okay, why don't we just strike
Wait a
out the
minute,
word
maybe I'm
not?
confused.
We could just strike out the word not. Applications to install alternate suppression systems are eligible to receive assistance from the sprinkler revolving fund. That would probably be a better way to say it,
Okay, so we want to
since it confused all of us.
unstrike all of it except for the word not.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
21 and 22.
So it would make sense to be one amendment because it really, the objective of that amendment is to combine it all into one fund. And maybe, that would be, instead of just all these line items, sections.
So, Madam Chair, I would make the motion that we, do you want me to read all of them? So we're unstriking everything except the word not.
I just did it by line.
What? Do you need to read it over again, Takia?
No, I have it.
You got it? Okay. Okay, we got one fund, good. How about, I'll entertain a motion for this amendment.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion that we amend 3022 with the following 10 amendments. Do you want me to read them all?
Takia said we didn't have to, but I have a question. Do we amend up at the very, very top where lines 2 and 3?
The title?
I don't think we did that. I think we went down to line 25, but we didn't address 2 and 3. That it should read sprinkler and electrical assistance revolving fund, strike the S.
Which line are you talking about?
But that actually doesn't go into the code. The title at the very, very top, do you amend that? It's above,
So line 3, What should it read?
Sprinkler and electrical assistant revolving fund, would strike the S again.
Okay. Sprinkler and electrical, insert sprinkler and electrical revolving fund, stays the same. So we're inserting after sprinkler and electrical on line 3.
Okay, I'm good. Are you good? Did we have a motion?
Yeah, the motion is to amend 03022 with all of those corrections.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Do we have a motion for favorable recommendation of O-30-22 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. All right. Next, sorry, Tricia, you should have told you just to wait till the end here. O-32-22, this is increasing the city manager position, assistant city manager position, and also changing the number of days that temporary employees shall be employed. Maybe we should do that one first. Let me see what,
It's all in one.
I mean, that portion of it first.
Tricia Hopkins, Human Resources Manager. We are attempting to do a couple of things with this legislation because it is exempt service. One of our experiences that brought us here is we went through an extensive audit and an appeal process and a resolution process with the Maryland State Retirement System. And so in that, they reviewed our language here with regard to employment agreements. And the reason we are changing the language around temporary employees is, as you know, we have established a process by which employment agreements convert down the road into exempt service or civil service positions under certain conditions. The state, let me just take the two parts that are in here together because it's all related to the audit. The state was very specific about what we could and couldn't do with exempting ourselves from converting positions to civil service. And so in the process of that, we reviewed the way we described our temporary employees, because we do have temporary employees that don't work consecutive days, 106 days. The idea of 106 days is that's your summer employment. That's like Memorial Day to Labor Day. And so there are a lot of laws, labor laws around exempting full-time summer employment, essentially. And what we found is we have some agreements that individuals are on standby notice. We have 2 agreements that are attached to planning and zoning, for example, that do inspections work as backup when there are vacancies or too much to handle. And so because they're sporadic, it doesn't really speak to eventually turning those positions into civil service. So we thought, let's refine our language a little bit better. And so that's why you have that there. With regard to, sorry, I was catching up on my emails while we were talking. With regard to the section that deals with 31020, we were advised that we needed to make sure that in section B, we struck the language "or similar position," so that was a specific request under the settlement arrangement, as well as under C, that only 100% grant-funded positions could be exempted from conversion. And so that's why you have this here before you.
You're talking about the the agreements just made for this budget? Yeah.
Well, or any, yeah, going forward. Yeah, so those, that was always our intent. I just want to be real clear. That was always our intent. When we said grant funded, we meant fully grant funded. We didn't mean partially grant funded. But we needed to put clarifying language in here to satisfy the state's expectation in that settlement.
And could you give us an example of a temporary employee that doesn't work consecutively?
I believe I just
Just the
did.
position, you don't have to name the person.
I believe I just did with the individuals that serve as backup inspectors.
Oh,
And,
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
May I ask, does that also apply to seasonal?
Yes, so there are some seasonal employment that, you know, for example, in the harbor master's office, they may start earlier, may not work full-time, but may start earlier and help with the as a dock assistant or assistant harbor master, those kinds of positions. And so, you know, a lot of times they'll need to come in because our sailing season will begin before, you know, Memorial Day, and, you know, kind of ramp up and then continue into the fall. So that gives us some greater flexibility. It had nothing to do with the audit per se, but it was like, it's more about, is that practical for us to really look at those positions that aren't full year to convert them into civil service or exempt service positions and bear the expense related to that.
Did you want, go ahead.
May I ask, Ms. Hopkins, the grade for the city manager, assistant city manager, and both of these, the special projects arts administrator, did both of these have to go before the civil service board?
Neither, because they're in the exempt service. Only civil service related positions go before the civil service board. And so under the code, the requirement is that the human resource manager has the responsibility for the pay plan. And you know, that for me means I'm doing surveying work, I'm comparing to other jurisdictions, I'm looking at external equity, internal equity, and also the requirements of the job when making those determinations or recommendations. And there's the responsibility of developing the job descriptions that for the exempt service is the human resources manager and the city manager. And so with regard to both of those, that process was completed. With regard to the assistant city manager, because there was a desire to reevaluate the job requirements. And I mean, I don't want to speak beyond what David would say here, but in our exchanges, which included Mike Malinoff as well, we were looking at the position in terms of a true support and ability to represent the city manager in some key responsibilities.
I want to be clear about the assistant city manager. It is or it is not. It says assistant city manager. It is not assistant to the city manager, but it is an assistant city manager position. And I'm questioning it, and not really questioning, but I'll make my point. I sponsored the legislation to create an assistant to the city manager. But I also sponsored the legislation to create the city manager when Mr. Malinoff was our first city manager, knowing all along that it takes more than one person in that office to do the job. So the intent was to expand that office and to give the city manager assistance by assistant, by I'm going to say this politically incorrect, but a secretary, other assistants within that office. So in my mind, all along, it should not be a one-man office because it's not a one-man job unless you're planning to kill him. And so under the mayor, the current mayor, they changed it to an assistant to, no, they changed it to an assistant city manager.
Actually, we're not changing the title at all. It has, I've been here 9 years now. It's never been called assistant to the city manager during my tenure.
This is what the council approved when Ms. Sutherland was our city manager. And it took me 2 years to get that approved, assistant to. And then 6 months later, it was changed to an assistant. So I can just tell you from the perspective of what we did as a council. And if you talk to anybody else that was sitting here at the same time, they'll concur.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to provide you the background of what I researched. And when Mike Malinoff was city manager, and Virginia Burke, as you may recall, was in that position, we only really brought the description over with the title from when it was occupied prior to. And so that was called assistant city manager. That was what Virginia Burke's title was back then as well. So I don't honestly know where the disconnect is, but that was called assistant city manager back then.
The position we created was different.
Okay.
I'll just put it like that.
Okay, I
It
think that's
was an
fair.
assistant to the city manager. And initially, the first year, Ms. Sutherland would not have it. And the next year, she agreed, an assistant to. That did not remove the assistant from the code. Okay, but we were not filling that position. We were filling the assistant to.
Yeah, because the title was already there.
Right,
And it had not been removed, even though the position, there was no allocation for it.
Absolutely.
After Mayor Panelides came into term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just want us to be clear now that we're talking about the assistant city manager. And I'm good with this,
Okay.
okay? But I just want us to be clear about it.
Well, I'll
because-
just say from my perspective, that's what I think we're doing and,
Okay.
and supporting that and doing it. And that's what all of my research and my professional judgment is attentive to.
There's no doubt that
Yeah.
we need this position,
Okay.
okay? And I'm not speaking in opposition. I just want to be clear because I've learned over the years, we need to be clear.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Well, and that's why I want to speak to that, because where I'm coming from professionally was doing comparisons to deputy level positions to the chief executive officer in the jurisdictions that we compare to, as well as looking at what the duties of and responsibilities of in discussion with the current city manager and the incoming city manager. So I just want to be transparent in that.
So let me ask Mr. Gerald, are we also, and I think we're looking for an assistant city manager, are we not? Are we,
Mr. Malinoff is, yes.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Malinoff is looking for an
Okay, then
assistant
maybe
city
I should
manager.
ask him this question, but are we also looking for an assistant in that department?
No.
Okay.
You
and-
mean an admin assistant when you say an
Yeah,
assistant?
an admin person, yes.
No, because we use Berenice. She sits right outside the city manager's office. She's also the admin assistant for the whole mayor's office, but she certainly supports the city manager as well.
And we appreciate her at the same time.
We do appreciate her.
City manager should have his own administrative assistant, I'm just saying. Okay, and that will be my effort going forward, but here we are, and I'm good with this.
Okay.
The other position, special projects and arts administrator.
So this is the conversion of the position currently occupied by Brian Cahalan. And
Is he a contract person now?
he's under an employment agreement, yes. Yes, and the other positions in that, in the mayor's office were converted in 2019. I just want to be transparent again. When we went through the Maryland State Retirement System audit, they determined that his position was one of, among others, that we were required to enroll in the Maryland State Retirement Plan. And so we have. And so from the standpoint of a financial impact, it's already blended in terms of a major element of benefit support. And so I've studied that position carefully. I've gotten a good job description, worked collaboratively with the former chief of staff and the current chief of staff. And so that's completed its process. And my recommendation is a grade 10 for that position. And it puts it in the exempt service. We must title it, and we must obviously list it in the exempt service section of the code in order to be appropriately created.
It just sounds like a lower grade than, so, but you've done your analysis of what?
I have,
Okay.
I have, and we've talked that through as well.
Okay, then I'm good with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
A general question, do we address this position in the charter at all? I mean, I see that we have a big section on the deputy city manager of resiliency, but there's nothing in the charter that I see addresses any sort of more than one city manager thing. It just all city manager. Was that, don't we have to do something in the charter for this?
Well, you do have an exempt service section.
Oh, I'm talking about the assistant city manager
I know.
position. Okay.
I realize you are, but I would just like to
okay.
explain that you do have a provision within the exempt service section that talks about the ability, that there are certain positions that are required for confirmation by the council, and there are other positions that are not. So I believe that because the deputy city manager for resiliency and sustainability was placed in the charter is because that's also a position that's subject to council confirmation. It was ultimately defined that way. The position of assistant city manager is among those titles that is appointed by the director, or, you know, in the case of the city manager, by the city manager. So that doesn't require those positions to go through council confirmation, and I wouldn't think even considers it to be elevated for definition in the charter.
Okay, it gives the city manager has that liberty. Naive question on my part, this grade level, how does it compare to the deputy? Can I ask this question? Yeah, how does it compare to the deputy city manager for resilience and sustainability? What is that grade? You don't have to mention names, but.
For the deputy city man, that's a grade 20.
That's a grade 20?
Yeah, and this is a grade 18.
To grade what?
18.
Okay.
And so if you look in city government, some of your significant departments, the Department of Public Works, the assistant public works director is grade 18. The deputy in transportation is also, as I recall. And so that's a level of comparison internally. But again, the external comparison is, you know, what's the distinction between the chief executive officer and the deputy in terms of breadth of salary difference. So we are, in all fairness, we do not compensate our city manager on a level that's competitive with the surrounding jurisdictions. So you have to take that under consideration as well. But you need to make sure that the assistant to a director level, or an assistant to the city manager has an appropriate grade distinction there, which we've done.
When you say comparable to other jurisdictions, are those jurisdictions a city manager form of government or a?
Some are, some are
Some
not.
aren't, yeah.
So, for example, in our comparators, we have the City of Alexandria, City of Gaithersburg, City of Rockville. The City of Rockville, many of these jurisdictions compensate with a base salary amount, not a range. So you need to take that into consideration. But in the City of Alexandria, their city manager is paid $287,000 a year. In City of Rockville, $253,000.
Do you have any questions, Alderman O'Neill?
No. Actually, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Do we have a job description written for the special projects arts administration position?
Yes, we've created one, yes.
I didn't remember seeing that. Is that in our
Well, under the
code open.
under the code, those positions that are at the director level, those job descriptions are approved by the council. The other job descriptions that are in the exempt service are approved between the human. I have a hard copy with me, but I can email.
Yes, please.
Well, it hasn't been provided because, again, the description creation is the responsibility of the human resources manager and the city manager. So I put forward those that you have a role in approving, but if you want that for information, that's another point.
Okay.
Is there a time limit on this? One concern I have is that I'd like to hear the city manager to be Mike Malinoff's, to address Alderman Finlayson's concerns, what he sees this position is, and speak to a little bit about how, he will organize his department. Do we have time for that, if we postpone this?
I think the concern might be the delay is that you'll have all of August, that you won't have an opportunity to vote. I don't know, what do you
Yeah, I'm not
suggest,
sure
David?
what the urgency is. I mean, it would, I don't know how close he is on a candidate. I don't even know if he has a candidate right now.
Yeah.
So that would be the determining factor.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't speak to
Yeah.
him right now, but
Yeah.
Okay,
you have a
it's being
question?
referred to rules, and rules isn't meeting until September,
Oh, okay.
so.
oh,
Yeah. I'd like a motion to postpone the decision on this, unless
I'll
there's any
make
more
that motion,
discussion.
but I'd like to ask Ms. Hopkins a question.
Absolutely.
For clarification, is the city manager on the same grading? Is the city manager, what's the level of the city manager?
what's the pay level?
Uh-huh.
In the code, it's 180,000.
I don't really want the dollar amount, but
Oh.
is there a grade?
No, there's no grade assignment. It's a pay,
Okay.
it's a pay range.
Okay,
Yeah.
And it's also subject to the same process that the council salaries go under.
Salary Review Commission.
Yeah, the salary review. So they look at the same manager plus the mayor plus the city council.
I don't know what that means. Plus,
Yeah, we had that commission that looks at the council salaries, where they also look at the city
you're
manager's
right,
salary.
right.
Yeah,
And so they're not, it's determined by that commission.
yeah. And it's also tied to, it's in the third year of the term before that commission meets and makes a recommendation.
We had, many years ago, we tried to put all the directors on 20.
Yeah.
You may have been here at that time.
Not at
It
that
was
time, but
prior to the last administration.
yeah.
And we had all of our directors, including HR, MIT, and what's the other one? And anyway, we put everybody on 20. I'm seeing the assistant city manager, the city manager should be the highest ranking person in the city, including salary-wise.
Yes.
Next are the directors, but we've created this assistant or deputy city manager for resilience. Is she on the 20 scale, or is she on the scale at all? Or is that a separate, similar to the city manager?
The
Mr. Gerald,
title is
She's an A10
okay, she's an A10,
20.
or A18,
She's
or
20.
A20, yeah.
or 20.
A20, what did I say, 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the deputy city manager is an A20, so she's on the scale and she's at the top with the directors. And you remember the history of that position, how we got to that, because that used to be the DNEP
Yeah, oh, I remember.
director position, then became,
I'm just trying to do some comparables in my mind with the assistant city manager.
Respectfully, I didn't have a role in that.
Okay,
So
well,
I can't really, I don't know that I can professionally speak to it.
so that position is a 20. But we're creating an assistant city manager as an 18,
Correct.
which doesn't seem quite right to me. If the city manager is away, who's in charge? I assume it's going to be the assistant city manager. Mr. Gerald, am I wrong in assuming that?
that would be my way of doing things, yeah.
So we're going to have somebody with a higher pay grade over the person who's in charge.
Yeah,
Is
the-
that
the-
our intent?
Well, I think the question is, during day-to-day operations, nobody reports to that person.
No one
right?
would,
Nobody reports to that position. It's simply an assistant to the city manager. I mean, that's not the right, they assist the city manager, but there's no, and maybe Mr. Malinoff will change that and make some of the departments report to that person. But the way it's envisioned right now, they have no direct report. So it's hard to bump that up to an equivalent to like the public works director when that person has 100 reports, 100 people in the department, and the assistant city manager has 0. So I think that's probably what most influenced the A18 instead of the A20.
okay, and I understand your explanation. But I do look back to when Ms. Burke was here. Of course, we didn't have a deputy position in existence, but I just think we need to keep an eye on this, I guess. I'm not trying to change what we're doing here at all. And actually, I would approve this if because I'm comfortable with it. But I do think that we need to keep an eye on, and maybe the next year will give us a greater frame of reference to the assistant city manager compared to the deputy position. Because in my mind, they're on the same level. But, okay, thank you. Was I supposed to ask something else?
No, I was just, that's kind of
You were
why
saying something to me.
I was thinking that it really would be best to hear from the incoming city manager to address this new department, if you will. I mean, and some of Alderwoman Finlayson's questions about this deputy director, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to hear from him. So I'd have a motion to postpone. Accept a motion to
I'll
postpone.
move that we,
May I ask, are you asking to postpone the entire legislation? Because there is
Oh, that's a good
some other
point.
elements attached to this that
Oh,
are
so how do we do that?
important for action.
We can't
well,
do,
what we could is to amend out what we don't want in, but do we want to do that? What is it that we are uncomfortable with? Is it the city manager salary? Is it the special projects arts administrator salary? Or is it other?
I believe he'll be back for the city council meeting on the 25th, is that right?
No.
Yeah, I think he's going to be back to work next week.
I'd like to hear more about how the city is going to be run. I mean, and that ties almost into what our strategic plan is. You read the current code, and the mayor is the chief executive officer. and we have a city manager, a hybrid form of government. It seems like we always have a need for a position and we add it on and then we question it later. I think that our hiring has to be in line with our strategy. I mean, I know, for example, we were very strong on environmental and resiliency, so it was, decided that we'd hire this deputy director. That's not what's before us, but the public, at least my residents, see this as a growing city manager office. And are we at the point where we're going to have a city manager form of government? I truly believe we're at that breaking point where this needs to seriously be discussed before we add this substantial amount of money to salaries. So, number one, I think it would be advantageous to hear how Mr. Malinoff intends on running the city in conjunction. We're also, with this legislation, advancing a position in the mayor's office. As we all know, the mayor's office has grown. So again, the public sees that and says, at least to me, what are we doing here? The mayor's office is getting bigger and bigger, always a justifiable reason. But we've just got to stop and re-examine, how do we want the city to be run, and where are our best efforts, and where is the best value for the money that we put into it, because we are talking about a lot of money. So I guess my thought is a postponement would be helpful, and I don't think we can piecemeal it, so it would be a postponement of the entire bill. I hear that it has to go to Rules and City Government in September. Is that before or after we meet in September, Rules? Oh.
So does that mean that there was an intent for this not to go forward on the 25th?
So what's the date of the meeting in September? First meeting in September is when? No, what's the council's first meeting? Is it the 12th?
No.
Yeah, it's the 12th. So I would expect our meeting to be, what are we meeting on Fridays? Would be the 9th of September, which would be before the next council meeting.
Next finance too.
This is, I have to say professionally, this is very disheartening for the other elements that we're trying to accomplish in this ordinance, to comply with the state, to demonstrate to the state that we're complying with the agreed to elements of the appeal, and also that we have an individual that's been, affected by the lack of a title to properly convert the position to.
Yeah, maybe we should have put them in separate ordinances, or I don't know. But we do have a finance committee meeting on September 7th.
Of what?
September.
I will not be here on the
And then Rules and City Government is the 9th, and then the 12th is the following city council meeting. So it could get on.
So what is it that is time sensitive?
We cannot properly, we're not properly compensating the incumbent because the title's not there for the special
Are we
projects.
talking about the folks that worked the 106 days? Or are we talking about?
No, probably not that, because the, conversion is down the pike. But less so that than it is about complying with the audit outcome or the settlement outcome with the state, and also the position in the mayor's office.
Well, help me to understand what's here that's mandated by the states.
So that is the 100% grant funded and the elimination of or similar position in section 310020. But I'm also, I know we haven't talked all together, both David Jarrell and Mike Malinoff, but I do feel that there is some urgency or some expectation on the part of Mr. Malinoff that this is in place so that he can begin his search pretty soon for an assistant city manager. And if I can try and text him, and if he has the opportunity to provide some email feedback, I don't know if that'll suffice. But, you know, when you say this has been referred to rules and it's after the expected date of final vote, which was expected for the 25th.
You're talking about next Monday night.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
And I think that was the understanding of Mr.
It was
Malinoff
never-
as well.
We're sure it's on rules, right?
It's on rules, but rules doesn't meet until the 9th of September.
Right, and we meet on the
I didn't
7th.
realize that it had been referred to.
We can postpone and we're in line with.
Takia, was this referred to rules? Because this is on the agenda for Monday.
It is or is not?
It is.
I don't know why it was on there, but this.
Was it originally, it was originally referred?
By code, yes.
It was rules
Yeah.
not able to meet until September? That,
No, that would be, so this was adopted on first reader on June 27th. And the referrals were made that night. Then the next meeting would have been the 11th for the public hearing. The public hearing closed then. Rules had already met. So the next rules meeting wouldn't have been until September.
I don't think that
And
was
also how about
clear to those of us who thought this
Economic
was moving
matters.
forward
Has it been through economic matters?
Economic Matters meets tonight.
at
It's on their
5.
agenda?
Yes.
It's on the
But
agenda.
it's only required to go to rules.
No, by code, it was required to go to Finance, Economic Matters, and Rules.
Okay, by code.
By code.
Okay, I thought by code was just rules, but. Well, Finance Committee's not ready to vote on it.
But it doesn't hurt because it's a delay of rules.
Well, Mr. Malinoff can still hire an assistant city manager. I mean, we had one. So there's nothing stopping that from going forward, is there?
No, but some candidates would not take the job at 14. I think that's his big concern. It's the type of caliber of person that he wants to bring into that job would not accept a 14.
So it's about the salary increase, that step increase, I shouldn't say salary.
Great, yeah, correct.
And with the other position, it's already filled. But how, is that a change, or is that just, is the person in that position today being paid comparably to a A10?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so?
We can, well, I suggest we'll have to go back and look at his employment agreement and, yeah.
Can't hear.
I can look that up right now and compare it to the pay scale. Do you have the pay scale in front of you?
Yeah, the pay scales, it's a grade 10, but I think it was budgeted for a certain level already.
We already had it budgeted aligned with what we thought was coming up as a change. So the budget is there. It's just a matter of if you're asking if the person's salary cannot be adjusted until this is approved.
But was that for both positions, Ms. Dickinson?
We don't have a person in the other, in the.
I know, but was the salary in the budget proposed for,
The assistant city manager,
Assistant.
no, it was in there as a 14.
okay, and what about the special?
That's what I'm looking at. Your fiscal report says it is.
Your microphone's on.
Oh, yep, the,
Fiscal
Arts-
report says the funding is there, but we can't actually pay this
Right,
person
right,
more
right,
money
right.
until we approve this, so.
so this, it isn't, to be clear, the position increased to 18. A18 is not budgeted for fiscal year 2023 in its entirety. I think there's like a $30,000 plus difference, which would, I know that we have money from the vacancy that we've held, but it still will be an added recurring expense.
Yeah,
consider.
it'll have to be budgeted next fiscal year
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
approved. This year, we'll have enough vacancy savings to
Correct.
make up the difference.
So I don't think we have to worry about the funding for this year, because we've had the vacant position for 7 months now.
But we're still establishing, hypothetically, we'd still establish a position, which is a recurring expense. I assume
Yeah.
it would be for more than just 2023. So either A, we vote, or B, we postpone. I don't think we can pull it apart. So do I have a motion for either?
I'll make a motion to postpone.
Are you holding your breath for me to say something?
Oh, you're not seconding?
I
Okay.
am not. Madam Chair, I'm ready to vote on it. And what I heard you say was you want to hear from Mr. Malinoff, and we still have that opportunity to hear his plans
what's the
and all
range
of
of
that in September.
Oh, no, step 3 is, okay. So it kind of lines up with the step 3.
So Madam Chair, you can second it in this situation.
Second the postponement? Yeah.
That's the motion that's on the
Yeah,
floor.
I'll second the postponement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Opposed? Yeah, I know, it's getting late. We're at the 3-hour mark. Okay, so we have two yays and 1 nay on the postponement.
Okay.
All right. And we'll make sure Mr. Malinoff is at the meeting on the 7th, or was that the date? Yeah. Okay, last but not least, city supported special events in fiscal year 2023. This is a resolution per the special events code that we list every year. Our city supported events, it used to be called city sponsored, but due to legalese, it's city supported, but meaning the same thing, that the fees are waived. The best thing to look at, or that I recommend that you look at, is the staff report, because it lists those events that are city supported. We've added Juneteenth.
Madam Chair, they're in the resolution on page 2 also.
Oh, okay, good. So you can look at either or. And are there any questions?
Madam Chair, this is, I think, more of a formality
Yeah,
than anything else. We usually have to approve
yeah.
annually all of our supported events. And
Yeah, and we did, you're absolutely correct, but we did have to change the word sponsored to supported. That was one reason for this as well.
I don't think that changes our level of service for
Correct.
them, but
Always.
the semantics of it.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to R 3622.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right, Director Dickinson, last but not least, if you have an update for us?
Said no.
She said no. Okay, cool.
Yeah, just, I mean, I talk, it would,
She just did audit this week, so go ahead.
yeah. You know, I wanted to comment that I typically give you an update on what's going on in the finance office, and I end up telling the same things to all 3 bodies that I go in front of, and don't know what everybody wants to hear about. The code says I'm to give a report on the city's finances. I don't know what that is. So I thought, instead of going over the list of things we're doing, we could develop some kind of data point or something that you want to hear on a regular basis. Maybe we could just write it down and I'll give it to all 3 groups as my report. I mean, we're, you know, we have vacancy, you know, I go through the, you know, what I'm working on, which is always the same things. The P3, the P3 agreement is still not 100% completed. We're working on that. I am trying to fill my positions. Procurement officer, we haven't done the interviews for the grants accountant yet. And then we're doing a lot of year-end, June 30 year-end accounting now, as well as loading up the Munis system for the new year. And that includes getting everybody's payroll updated. As you know, we've got the bonuses coming out this week, and we have to put in pay rate increases, so my staff's working on that.
May I?
Yes.
Ms. Dickinson, I think it might be helpful if you included where we are in percentage of the budget.
So we do that report on a quarterly basis per another requirement in the code and have quarterly reports. So if by that, if we meet at the finance committee twice a month, am I giving you the most recent quarter or the month or what? And do,
Well, I think we could leave that to you just to keep us, as long as we get it at the same quarterly basis. And I don't see there's anything wrong with, you creating a report and handing it out to us and letting us ask questions if there's stuff we don't understand. I don't think we need to make it more labor intensive for you. But I do think that we need to hear out loud for the public where we are in our budget and quarterly or however you deem it's more appropriate. We get funding from not funding, but we get our tax revenue from the county. How many times a year?
how many times do we get?
A year. That we get a payment in September?
We get a large one in the beginning of October. We get smaller ones in between. We get a large one in January or February from the second payment that some opt to use. And then we get almost monthly amounts from them based on what's been collected so far.
I just think it may be informative for the public to hear on those quarterly bases. We just got funding from the county and, we've eliminated or expended 60% of our budget. I don't know.
Okay.
But that kind of
I'll think
thing.
about it.
I think that's what we had done in the past.
That's what was being delivered before I got here. That's what I don't know is what these reports included.
I think, and just in looking in what you've reported on before is just throwing out ideas is obviously any, I'm just doing Roman numeral, 1 is any pending negotiations, that have a financial impact, obviously, where that would be the ARPA in this case. And then you go into what Alderman Finlayson said, the budget status, where you are perhaps in the quarterly report, where you are in the ACFR budget, budget report status, and if there's anything you can share with us, concerns, et cetera. And you've done that before. And then go into accounting, what your department is working on. And then last but not least would be procurements that are, status of procurements that are.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, status of procurements.
Okay.
Is that something that you've spoken about that before, that we
It
have?
depends on what we're procuring, if it's related to my department. I will
Right.
speak to it.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of procurements in our department, but if
I'm
you're
thinking
looking
of-
for something citywide,
Well,
that could be a
yeah.
long list of
Staff
procurements.
openings, it would be part of that. I mean, I'm just thinking of money coming in, money going out. And one of those would be. Is that helpful? Is that-
Yes. I mean, that gives me some idea where to start. And I think I might just, like we've talked about before, put it in writing and then present it for the various meetings during that month.
Yeah.
I would like to request, I know that the community associations that get funds from the community grants, they are supposed to be supplying us with quarterly reports, I believe. And basically a status on whether we received those quarterly reports or not. And an area where we can review those quarterly reports.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since you mentioned that, at the audit committee meeting Monday, there was I think it came in, there was it came from finance in talking to some of these groups that they found that very hard to do, accounting-wise, staff-wise, they don't have. So there's an idea about limiting that to twice a month, twice a year, was it? Were you at the audit? You were at the audit committee meeting, right?
Oh, that's what the assistant finance director was on the committee and selecting the community grants.
Yes.
And in doing that, and now she's doing some administrative work related to those grants since we don't have an assistant city manager, which is who handled those grants before. Okay. Now she's having to take over that administrative role now. Okay. And so she commented, and I agree, that the requirements that are set forth in the code for these community organizations are too much for the size of the organizations and the amount of money we're giving them. Quarterly reports are excessive. And she's got some suggestions on how we might streamline it, including maybe to just have them give their presentation, which is when they apply, they tell you what they want to use it for, give them the funding, and have them report once a year back to you on what they did with it. Maybe as streamlined as that. But the code provisions have the quarterly reports, and we don't release the funding in one chunk. We release it in two pieces during the year, depending on those quarterly reports. So the administrative task of accepting, getting the awards out, and paying them, and looking at the quarterly reports is excessive for the total amount of money that's going out the door.
Excessive for both
us.
you and your money.
Yes.
It's excessive for both parties.
Both, community grant recipients and us.
Yeah. I was going to mention that today, I don't know if we have for the good of the order, but that came up recently, and I think it requires more discussion. If would we be receptive to having Ms.
It's going to require a code revision because those requirements are in the code.
Yeah, I mean, it probably requires further discussion. Did you want Ms. Donnelly to come to a meeting or something? Next finance meeting?
Yeah, if she's the one that's going to be in charge of.
Who is? So I have
just for a little bit until we have an assistant city manager.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then it'll go back to that person.
yeah. I pushed back on. Nikki Pletzer used to handle a lot of this when she was here, but it's an administrative task that I don't believe should be in the finance office because it's programmatic in nature. So we've pushed back on it. It went to the assistant city manager, and now we've had ongoing discussions about who should be doing that. There's others that could be doing it too, but so that's why the chuckling when we brought that up.
May I ask, I just heard you say that you pay out funding for the grant twice a year?
I believe, and I'll have to go check, I believe we give them in two pieces based on some of the quarterly markers. Like we require a quarterly report before we give the first half, and then we require a next quarterly report before we give the second half or something like that. I'd have to go check the payment scale, but we don't give it all out at once.
No.
Most were paid in two pieces.
And that's fine, but we used to do it quarterly. We used to, and I think Mr. Jones said that
maybe there are some that are quarterly.
Because
I
people
think
were not
most of them
getting
are
their
quarterly. So we get the
amounts.
quarterly report in, we check and make sure that that's adequate, then we process the payment. So I think those go hand in hand. So I think it's quarterly, but I may be wrong.
I don't know if it's always quarterly. I thought there were a couple that were going out semi-annually in two pieces, but I'd have to go back and check. But it is too much to do that.
I do recall there was a small grant like $6,000, if I remember correctly, to do some capital improvement. And I had requested that they receive it all at once after the first quarter, because you can't pay over 4 periods.
You can't
to get
pay
a
your
bathroom
contractor,
rebuilt.
yeah, for a capital improvement over 4 quarters,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, so,
And, you know, you look at the total dollars that the city spends every year and the dollars that go out for these grants and the amount of staff effort to administer these is out of proportion to the dollars that we're spending.
So maybe we can add that as an ID item to the next finance committee meeting and before I write a ordinance on it. Okay, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Sorry about the long meeting, but we wanted to get it all done before
Motion to
August
adjourn.
break. Do I have a second?
second,
All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. Exhausted.